Chapter 856. The white light wrapped around the Black Death Emperor's left foot, and his retreating movement slowed down. Thea took the opportunity to fill her sword with emotion and slashed at the back of his heart. With a puff, an unbearable stench spread in the air. The young lady, who was a bit of a clean freak, endured it and stirred the holy sword in his body again. "You can't kill me." The Black Death Emperor seemed to be explaining something very normal. His body shattered into dust, but in less than a second, his aura reappeared on a black lantern. His body stretched, holding a long stick in his hand. He was still as skinny and bony as before. Could he freely switch between all the black lanterns? The Black Death Emperor was not a living being, but more like a collection of consciousness. Conventional methods did not seem to work. Thea did not know whether to fight a war of attrition or not. The first to collapse would definitely be the elderly and children. She was a bit hesitant. The Black Death Emperor set up a barrier in front of him and turned to leave this world. This was the time to show the value of a hero. Hal Jordan was covered in green light and crashed into the Black Death Emperor. "Hal, no!" Carol Ferris knew that the Black Death Emperor was covered in death aura. She shouted and rushed over to help. The Black Death Emperor, who was about to take a step forward, was knocked back. His barrier was used to defend against Thea. He did not know that there was such a stupid person beside him who dared to crash into him with her body. Was her brain made of water? The green light shattered, and the death aura spread from the shoulder to the neck to the face. Hal Jordan's life was about to end in less than a second. The young lady was very reliable. She put down her worries and helped Hal disperse the death aura before turning to fight the Black Death Emperor. The two continued to fight. Every second the Black Death Emperor lasted, he lost a lot of death aura. He had to give up part of the Black Lantern rings. All the Black Lanterns in the universe suddenly paused for a second, and then some of the rings left the host and flew away. This made many intelligent planets feel relieved. Thea was very sensitive to death aura. Of course, she saw this change, but she could not stop the Black Death Emperor from increasing his supply. The gratitude of all intelligent life in the universe turned into countless prayers that filled the scales of order, and Thea could not stop it. Black Death Emperor's only thought was to run. He absorbed the Black Mountain from before and continuously logged off Black Lantern to maintain himself. Thea no longer took the initiative to attack. Instead, she used more defensive methods to reduce consumption. At the same time, she had the heroes attack with all their might. The death aura was completely connected, but the Black Lantern and the Black Death Emperor's defense was on a completely different level. The Black Lantern that the heroes destroyed was actually a part of the Black Death Emperor. Once this part of the death aura was destroyed, it was gone. The situation heated up. Gonda recalled all the green lights left behind on Odium and the scattered green lights all over the universe. Everyone raced against time to destroy the Black Lanterns. Thea also used her ultimate skills from time to time, causing white light to scatter in all directions like rain. She controlled it very well. The white light could only kill the enemy and destroy the death aura, but it could not resurrect them. "You can't run." Another slash landed on the Black Death Emperor's shoulder. With a sizzling sound, one of his arms was wiped clean by the death aura. However, he took the opportunity to open a passage behind him and jumped in without looking. Thea thought for 2 seconds. She did not know how long the White Lantern ring would last in there. In the end, she decided to chase after it because she realized that the passage that the Black Death Emperor had opened was actually a time passage. At the end of time, there was the Time Master Council, and at the beginning of time, there was the Endless Family. What was she afraid of? Although time was not her home ground, she still had people inside. The moment she entered the time passage, the White Lantern ring's energy became 99%. Thea did not mind. Time was fair to everyone and everything. Father Darkseid and the others were far away from time because of this fairness. If too strong a power entered time, it would be weakened like a dog. Previously, she could only enter with a clone. Now, she had to rely on her identity as a death reserve to get out of this predicament. Thea did not think that the Black Death Emperor would be in such a situation. If he could not win, he could just run. "This is a time passage. I'll go after him." With that, she rushed in. She was reminded in advance that she could not be blamed if any superhero insisted on going in. The river of time was as vast as ever, and there were all kinds of strange things. The originally long, wide, and tall three-dimensional world had a new kind of change here. Space was like a frame, and in her eyes it was all stagnant. This was a dimension piled up by countless three-dimensional worlds, and many three-dimensional projections appeared in front of her. Thea's eyes pierced through time and soon found the Black Death Emperor. He was not far away. "You're chasing death, new god." The Black Death Emperor saw the white light on her body start to fade, and there was a hint of smugness in his voice. "What are you bragging about?" Thea also saw that the opponent's aura was less than 1/5 of what it was at the beginning. What was there to be afraid of when a big account with no weapons, no HP, and no mana? As expected, the Black Death Emperor did not fight back. Instead, he ran with the flow of time and occasionally jumped into time to hide. One ran and the other chased. Time was advancing and retreating around them. 1 second they were in the Middle Ages and the next second they were in the 30th century. On the way, they met extreme speed and missed ballistic. Thea waved at them, indicating that this was a big boss, and that they should go back and rest. They kept jumping through time, sometimes fighting, sometimes running. Time weakened the Black Death Emperor very little, so little that it was almost non-existent. Thea was even more afraid of his death, and did not stop to rest. She wanted to see who would be the first to give up. "Hey Thea, I'm here." When they quickly passed through a certain time segment, Thea seemed to hear someone calling out to her from below. But how was that possible? Her dynamic vision was unparalleled. Even if it was just a quick glance, she could still restore the person's appearance in her mind. He was bare-chested, wearing cloth pants, and had a face full of beard. He seemed to be on a ship. Who was this person? She thought for a long time and suddenly thought of someone. Damn, that was Bruce Wayne. This guy wore a mask every day. If it was not for that highly recognizable square chin, it would not have been so easy to recognize him. She continued to chase the Black Death Emperor, but she sent a message to the Golden Vanguard, telling them to bring Master Bruce back to the vanishing point first. "Stop right there." Thea shot out 2 rays from her eyes. Ever since she killed the god of hunger, her rays had become even more powerful. They were probably 40 to 50% of the power of the Omega Ray now. She could not kill the Black Death Emperor. She could not do it, and neither could Darkseid, but she could stop the enemy for a while. The Black Death Emperor did not use his body to block the attack. He ran 2 steps to the left and found that the ray could track him. Helpless, he used the shackles on his left wrist to smash the ray away. Chapter 857. Thea had already noticed that the shackles were extraordinary. It seemed that someone had imprisoned the Black Death Emperor before. She had never seen the material of the shackles before. It was not any metal, fantasy material, or magic material, but it was extremely powerful. Any elemental energy that hit the shackles did not cause any effect. The young lady was very envious, but unfortunately, it was useless even if she cut off the Black Death Emperor's left arm. The arm automatically regenerated in the next second, and the shackles were still on it. This was even more advanced than his original weapon, the scythe. After knocking away the tracking beam, the Black Death Emperor did not even have time to celebrate before he heard a loud boom. A giant beam of light from outside the time directly hit the Black Death Emperor. The beam of light was filled with a violent and destructive aura, as if a universe was roaring. The time it passed by was shattered, and all kinds of colorful fragments scattered into the long river of time. Antimatter cannon? Thea did not have time to think about the trouble that would follow. She jumped back 2 timelines. She could not be mistaken about such a powerful antimatter cannon. Did the Anti-Watcher shoot the Black Death Emperor from outside the time? She wanted to leave the timeline, but seeing that the Black Death Emperor did not respond and was floating away along the long river of time, she hesitated and decided to seal the Black Death Emperor first. It was normal for the Anti-Watcher to shoot the Black Death Emperor. A multiverse level being trapped in the main energy source of the Black Lamp like a battery was unbearable. It was reasonable for the Anti-Watcher to take revenge. It would be abnormal if he did not take revenge. After all, the Anti-Watcher was a big shot who had destroyed countless parallel universes. However, he had a grudge against the Black Death Emperor, so Thea was not sure what his attitude towards her would be. After following the Black Death Emperor for more than 10 minutes in the long river of time, Thea saw that the Anti-Watcher had stopped and did not do anything else. Only then did she let down her guard. Was it because the guy was too heavily injured? He fainted after a single shot? That was the only explanation she could come up with. Many years later, she found out how much the anti-supervisor hated the Black Death Emperor. He did not care that he was almost out of health and forced himself to cross time and space to fire a shot at the Black Death Emperor. After that, the cannon exploded and the anti-supervisor fainted. At this time, Thea fished the Black Death Emperor out of the river of time. It could destroy a parallel universe in one shot. The power of the antimatter cannon was reflected in the Black Death Emperor. The Black Death Emperor was completely unconscious. There was a burning hole in his chest, and even his body could not heal it. One had to know that the Black Death Emperor was not a living being. He was some kind of conceptual existence. Flesh, blood, and bones were all external manifestations to him. If intelligent life forms were all humans, then he was a human. If they were all fish, then he was a fish. Ordinary life forms had nothing to do with him. Even so, he was still knocked unconscious. To be able to knock out a concept, the antimatter cannon's sharpness was evident. "Hand it over." Thea didn't say anything. She seized the rod from the Black Death Emperor's hand and put it on the head of the scythe. She didn't know if it would work. She then looked at the shackles on his wrists and neck. They couldn't be removed, at least she couldn't. Even if she forced a trade, Thea could only give up. Thea had taken the soul-sealing chains from the Heavenly Father's treasury when she was building the magic net. It was said that it had once tied up an ancient black dragon. She had originally planned to deal with Darkseid, but now she had to tie up the Black Death Emperor first. For light mirrors were attached to his limbs, constantly whittling away his aura of death. She then threw a bunch of random things into the hole in the Black Death Emperor's chest like sand. There were 4 emotions: the black of decay, the green of all things, the red of all life, the cells of the doomsday, and so on. Finally, he took out a coffin. This was one of the treasures in Hades's treasury. It was the huge ship that the Egyptian main god, the sun god, had taken to the underworld. Later, it was left in the hands of Osiris, and then changed into a coffin in the hands of Hades. Finally, it was passed to the young lady. She tied the Black Death Emperor up like a dumpling and threw him into the sun god's coffin. Decadent music was naturally indispensable. She added a bit of divine power to the echo stone of the underworld and set it to play on a loop. Could last for 3,000 years. She took out Eagle Man's hammer and Apollo's arrow. After a series of smashes, Thea nailed the coffin tightly. Only then did she heave a sigh of relief. This guy wouldn't be able to escape for 1,000 years if no one came to rescue him. She checked the Black Death Emperor's ranking. The result was gratifying. This guy had fallen to 210, and with the corrosion of the antimatter energy and the various things she added, his ranking continued to drop. It was only a matter of time before he and Uncle Da fell to the 300th rank. After sealing it, where to put the coffin became a problem. The starting point of time was eliminated immediately. She couldn't let the Black Death Emperor know about the Endless Family. The disappearing point of time was also not suitable for a bunch of weaklings. Even the entire timeline wasn't suitable. Parallel universe wasn't good either. Who knew when someone would come to rescue him? Actually, it was best to throw him into heaven. However, Thea didn't have any relationship with the angels. She suspected that the shackles on the Black Death Emperor's wrists and neck came from heaven. Only the archangels, who also used the light of life, Michael, and Lucifer, who had the power of creation, had the ability to take down the Black Death Emperor at his peak. In the end, she placed the coffin in Old Shazan's Stone of Eternity. Ordinary people couldn't come here, and those who weren't ordinary wouldn't come here either. It was a relatively safe place. Seeing that the cleanup work was done, she set up a few triggering alarms. It was better to be safe than sorry. Even if someone came in and tried to open the seal, she would be prepared. After that, Thea teleported to the disappearing point. Hi. Wearing a blanket, Bruce looked like he was rescued after a shipwreck. Seeing her come in, he greeted her with a normal expression. Golden Vanguard was checking various data on the other side and shook his head at Thea. What's wrong? What's wrong with me? Bruce's voice was a little hoarse. Thea didn't say anything. She picked up the report and looked at it. Then, she stared at Bruce and looked at it twice. She signaled for Golden Vanguard to explain. The Golden Vanguard recounted everything that had happened since he went missing. I messed up the timeline? If I go back, To be honest, when he saw Thea, Bruce was very happy. He didn't know how long he had been drifting in the timeline, but Golden Vanguard didn't bring him back to Gotham. Instead, it brought him to this strange place. As smart as he was, he already had a hunch. All right, I should pay for my recklessness. Killing me will solve everything, right? His expression was still calm, as if he was talking about something that had nothing to do with him. Not really. You're our comrade. The Justice League won't give up on you. Here, take this. Thea said as she passed Black Death Emperor's staff to him. Batman looked at the staff in his hand. What was this? It was black and cold to the touch, as if his blood and bones were frozen. Chapter 858. Seeing that Bruce only frowned slightly, Thea thought to herself that it was just as she had expected. Ordinary people would not be able to touch the Black Death Emperor's origin weapon. After all, the weapon and the body were completely similar in nature to a certain extent. Batman still had the Omega effect in his body. Although it was not much, once he returned to the real world, he could still blow up half the universe. She pointed at the staff. The energy in this will neutralize the Omega effect. Originally, Thea wanted to use her own divine power to cleanse the death aura. Now that there was a strong labor force, it saved her a lot of trouble. I just have to hold it like this? Bruce felt that she was hiding some information. At least, she did not tell him everything. If you want to be faster, you can swing it like a staff. The faster your stamina is depleted, the faster the Omega effect will dissipate. Hearing that it was so simple, Bruce put aside his doubts and was happy. At least he did not have to die. As a martial arts master, Bruce knew 127 types of martial arts. If he could teach Nightwing the short staff, he naturally knew the long staff as well. He did not swing the staff like an idiot. Instead, he started to practice Wulong Bagua staff, Yuxia staff, and Antiochus Night staff techniques. Batman knew a lot of things. Thea had nothing to do, so she suppressed her strength and sparred with him twice. Finally, after half a day, just as Bruce was getting excited, a gust of death aura exploded. It flowed along his palm and arm and rushed towards his heart. Let go! Thea snatched the long staff away. At the same time, she used the white light to disperse the death aura. She checked again. Okay, the Omega effect has been eliminated. Your body is back to normal. After dealing with the big problem, it was time to go back. Bruce knew that this Golden Vanguard was an older version. It was slightly different from the one he knew. He also heard about the chaos in Gotham, the battle for the cloak, and the night of darkness. He wanted to go back to help. Thea thought for a while. You can only go back to my point in time. It's impossible to go back to when you disappeared because that timeline has been solidified. Who solidified it? Bruce didn't quite understand. By me, because I've experienced all those things before. If your power doesn't surpass mine, you won't be able to change those things. At any rate, it's very complicated. Thea almost fainted at the end. Knowing that he couldn't stop these things from happening, Bruce still felt a little down. Thea gave him an example. Look at the Golden Vanguard. He can only appear in my timeline for 3 seconds at most before he's squeezed out. This is because there's another Golden Vanguard in my timeline. If you want to go back to the time before the incident, you'll also face the same problem. Although there won't be two Bruce, I've experienced those things. For you, it's already happened and can't be changed. Even if there's no road ahead, the road I've walked is the road. No one can change it. Thea bragged a little. Even she felt that she was great. Bruce looked at her carefully for a long time. He didn't understand but felt that she was awesome. The Omega effect was dispelled. Thea brought Bruce back to Gotham. The night of darkness was over. All the black lights were switched off and the sun rose again. However, it would take a long time to calm the chaos. Seeing that Bruce had returned, the old butler, Fu, was so excited that he almost jumped up. Sia hurriedly comforted the old man, hoping that nothing bad would happen to him. Even if he was revived by the white lamp, he would still have to pay the price. The old butler thanked her profusely. Not long after a night of fighting, Dick Grayson, Damien, and Catwoman all ran out. Bruce hugged one, then another. Thea saw that there was nothing for her to do and politely left. As for who would be Batman in the future, they could discuss it among themselves. As soon as he entered the house, he saw Oliver sitting on the sofa. Diana was chatting with him while holding a cup of coffee. After briefly talking about the follow-up of Black Death Emperor, they got to the point. "Can that white light still be used?" Oliver asked anxiously. Diana also listened attentively. "I know what you mean. Old Robert, right? I also want to revive him, but unfortunately, it's not that easy. The revived person's life is not complete. This kind of revival is more like a loan. You borrow life force from the origin of life to revive yourself. After that, you have to work like a horse to repay the debt." Oliver felt that he didn't quite understand. "That's it?" It didn't seem like there was much of a burden between the lines. Diana understood. What Sia means is that the resurrected people will do a lot of things according to their will, whether right or wrong, at least against their will. The origin of life doesn't have our view of good and evil. It only wants things that are beneficial to it. That's right. The origin of life you're talking about has a weird name. It has a name. It's called the spirit of existence. It can order the revived person to do anything. Thea added. Life and death are relative. These powers shouldn't be abused, especially for us. If our loved ones are revived, what will the other superheroes think? Will their loved ones be revived too? Superman's adoptive father, Barry's mother, Neptune's father, and Hal's father. Will they all be revived? What about ordinary people's loved ones? The room fell into silence. You're right. I was too naive. Oliver looked depressed. After sending Oliver away, Thea changed into her home clothes and lay in Diana's arms, enjoying a rare moment of peace. Gently stroking her golden hair, Diana felt that she had something to say, but she didn't know where to start. Thea was very sensitive. She looked up slightly. Something to say? Is it about the revival? No, I just feel that you seem to have gone too deep into those dark positions of the gods. This seems like... The Valkyrie hesitated. She was very careful with her words. Thea smiled. Like I said in the battle, death isn't bad luck or a curse. It's a blessing. Everything will welcome death. Even the gods and the world will die one day. Death is life's friend. That's my philosophy. Live with a smile and die with a smile. Perhaps that's what I can bring to this world. Diana frowned slightly. The conversation had gone off track from the start. But Black Death Emperor wants to destroy us. Although I don't know how he's going to do it. But... Before she could finish, Thea sat up abruptly. She looked stunned. You don't know what Black Death Emperor wants to do? You don't know? Diana didn't know anything. She fought the whole night in a daze. Thea was also dumbfounded. She thought that everyone knew, but no one knew. Black Death Emperor lost unjustly. Actually, you should have felt it. Our Earth is the center of the universe. It was first born from a ray of light. When this ray of light came into contact with a physical body, it gave birth to the spirit of existence. Oh, right. When we fought for the scythe, Black Death Emperor didn't move because he wanted to pull out the spirit of existence. Chapter 859. Diana hugged the pillow as if she was listening to a story and signaled for her to continue. This being's spirit is connected to all life. Without a host, it's very weak. If the Black Death Emperor kills it, then all life will die, including us. That's his plan. That's what he planned, and that's what he did. Thea finally realized the problem. In this space-time, because of her interference, no one saw the being's spirit. A few with good eyesight might have seen the white light under the Black Death Emperor's feet. What was that? No idea. A bunch of people fought for an entire night without knowing the cause or the result. The only people who really understood were her and the Black Death Emperor. Even Scarface and the others didn't know how the Black Death Emperor was going to destroy life. Diana's clear eyes widened. Is there such a huge meaning in us fighting over the scythe? Of course, what did you think? I thought you saw how powerful the scythe was. So, Sia blushed. Not to mention at that time she was thinking the same thing now, but she couldn't admit it. She pretended to be angry. How dare you accuse me? I won't do it again. Take out the truth lasso. I want to hear the truth. Diana hurriedly passed the lasso to her. The young mistress tied the Valkyrie up tightly, but her posture was a little suggestive, as if she knew what she was going to do. Diana was a little embarrassed. No, what if the Righteous Alliance comes looking for us? There's so much going on outside. Let's do it at night. It's okay. The Righteous Alliance has so many people. They don't need the two of us. I'm going to teach you a lesson today. Sia licked her earlobe, from her ear to her smooth chin, and up to her delicate red lips. The tip of her tongue teased her wantonly, and then she raised 2 fingers that were as white as jade. You dare to say that I'm deep? Today I'll show you how deep I am. Tied up tightly, Diana could only beg for mercy. It's too deep. Don't. Knowing that her lover was still on the path of justice, Diana let go of her worries. The two interacted for a while. In the first half, the young mistress had the upper hand and could be said to be majestic. In the second half, the Valkyrie showed her strength. She was instantly defeated and bullied. How dare you say that I've gone astray? You're the one who's been corrupted. What's this? How dare you forge this kind of quasi-artifact? So what if you can forge it? Sia raised the shackles on her wrists and questioned loudly. Diana has never been gentle and virtuous. Now that she has been in the human society for so many years, she is experienced, has the lasso of truth and many indescribable semi-divine weapons. Dealing with Thea proves that she knows how to forge and has all kinds of rare materials at hand. She can really do whatever she wants. After fooling around for a whole day, their faces were still red when they went to the Zhenglian Club for a meeting the next day. As soon as Diana entered, she saw Bruce wearing Batman's vest and sitting on a chair. She was so surprised that she almost cried out. She finally remembered that there were still a few people who didn't know his true identity, so she held it in. Bruce was also stunned. He curiously glanced at the 2 goddesses. What was the meaning of their expressions? As if they had seen a ghost. My return is such a big matter. Why didn't you tell each other about it? You're so good at keeping secrets. Diana is smart. She glanced at Thea, meaning, why didn't you tell me about this? Sia smiled bitterly. She had really forgotten about it. Their interaction had been so intense. Who would remember this? After a few simple words about the Bat Team, Dick Grayson was glad that Bruce had returned. He should continue to carry the heavy burden of Batman. He happily took off his vest and went back to be his own Nightwing. There were naturally changes. Tim continued to be his own Red Robin and even wanted to form his own hero team. He was unwilling to return to Batman's side. Now, Bruce could only team up with his own son, Damian. Whether it was the first, second, or third generation, every generation of Robin seemed to want to leave his side. This was really interesting. The people from the Zhenglian Club arrived one after another, all of them sweating profusely. It was obvious how complicated the aftermath of Night of Darkness was. Superheroes were known for their sharp eyes. Batman's chin feature was so obvious that everyone could see it when he appeared again. However, no one said anything. Only Superman nodded. Yo, your Green Lantern changed again? Thea was slightly stunned when she saw Kyle Rayner enter. Kyle Rayner, the artistic and emotional Green Lantern who could become a White Lantern, was still a young and inexperienced lad. He was very cautious in his answer to Sia, a super beauty who was known to everyone. The people from the Zhenglian Club didn't interrupt their conversation. To Thea, Green Lantern was no secret. However, to the other superheroes, the Green Lantern Corps was extremely mysterious. They naturally pricked up their ears to listen to the inside story. Actually, there wasn't any inside story. Thea understood after hearing a few words. After Black Death King retreated and Black Lantern went offline, Scarface couldn't do anything alone and was captured by the superheroes. The four Guardians also successfully escaped. It didn't take much information from the universe to know that the Green Lantern Corps had suffered heavy casualties in this battle. There was a shortage of manpower everywhere. They definitely couldn't leave 4 Green Lanterns on Earth to play mahjong. The Guardians left the rookie Kyle Rayner and transferred all the experienced ones away. Guy Gardner returned to the main planet to train soldiers. John Stewart went to Sector 1313 to be stationed on planet Zonshire. What about Hal Jordan? Thea asked, somewhat puzzled. The Flash and Green Arrow, who had a good relationship with Hal, also looked over. Kyle Rayner was embarrassed. He was stripped of his ring by the Guardians. He's now an ordinary person. Noticing the uneasy expressions on their faces, Kyle Rayner, who was once an artist, knew how to conduct himself better than John Stewart. He quickly explained the situation. The truth was disgusting. The Green Lantern Corps had suffered heavy losses this time. Just the Guardians alone had died, one was missing, and more than half of the 7,200 Green Lanterns had died in battle. Therefore, someone had to bear the responsibility or intimidate the remaining people. The 4 little blue men targeted Hal Jordan. Their reasons were reasonable. Black Death King's appearance on Earth must have something to do with Earth. Guy Gardner's prestige wasn't enough to be this chicken. John Stewart had been following the Guardians closely. Kyle Rayner had been a Green Lantern for more than 2 days. The most suitable candidate was Hal Jordan. During the internal meeting, the Guardians stripped Hal of his ring in public with a groundless accusation. They fired him without giving him a chance to explain. There weren't many fools among the superheroes. Kyle Rayner had said it very straightforwardly. The few of them were very unhappy. Although they were unhappy, the heroes couldn't interfere with the internal affairs of the Green Lantern Corps. As for comforting Hal Jordan, the few of them felt that it was unnecessary. This guy had nerves as thick as steel. He might be having a one-night stand somewhere right now. Chapter 860. We'll have to trouble you with Central City's seal. The people from Earth 2 have already retreated, the Flash said. Thea agreed without hesitation. Superman held back and asked, "Can that white light revive the dead?" He was not the only one. The Flash and the Sea King looked over as well. They all had deceased relatives. Thea could only repeat what she had said to Oliver. On a practical level, there were many hidden dangers. On a moral level, one's ability should not be abused. This could not even be opened. Once it was opened, the world would be in chaos. Besides, the white light isn't completely under my control. Forcefully controlling it will lead to more bad consequences, Thea said honestly. The white light was useful when used passively, but it was too difficult to take the initiative. I understand. You're right. The dead should die. Their mission is over. We shouldn't revive them. Superman made a statement at the end. It was both for everyone and for himself. But what about those who have been revived? What about them? Do they still have their nature? Do we need to monitor them first? The Sea King suddenly thought of a question. Who has been revived? Thea was busy talking. She had been fighting the Black Death Emperor all this while. Apart from counter-surveillance, she only knew that Felix Faust had been captured by the Spellbreakers after his revival. She only knew this because her subordinates had reported it to her. She did not pay much attention to the rest. Click, click. The screen lit up with pictures. Although Batman had just returned to the team, he had clearly done a lot of homework. He did not show any signs of unfamiliarity and was still working as the team's brain. Even though she had a good relationship with Nightwing, Thea still felt that Bruce was 100 times better than him. Captain Boomerang, Nick Nacro, Felix Faust, Giovanni Zatara, Defying Lightning, Boston Brand, and these 2 winged extraterrestrials. Thea looked at the Eagle Knight and Eagle Girl on the screen. Her gaze was a little dazed. Were these 2 also on the battlefield? Did they fly over from the main planet of Purple Lantern? She really did not see them. They're not aliens. This man is Khufu, the Khufu from the Egyptian pyramid. This woman is the priestess of that time, Chayara. They died on an extraterrestrial planet, but they were Earthlings through and through. In addition, Boston Brand is different from them, very different. Thea had an expression that said, "I'm not pretending, but you're giving me this opportunity. Perhaps you can't tell, but in my eyes, even through the screen, I can see that Boston Brand's resurrection method is completely different from the others. The pure aura of life and the aura of death are acting on his body at the same time. His originally strange life form is now even stranger. Those people were resurrected by absorbing the aftermath of the White Lamp's attack. It's not too complicated, but Boston Brand was resurrected by the spirit of existence. To be honest, I don't really understand it anymore." Thea hugged her elbows and studied it for a long time, expressing her confusion. It didn't seem like a living person, but it didn't seem right to call him a dead person either. "Well, I think I came out with him, the Atom Man asked bitterly. Thea turned around and looked at him, shaking her head and nodding her head. She didn't give up until Atom Man's face turned pale. "You're fine. It's just that the life aura is making you abnormally excited. You won't be able to sleep for a week. Speaking of which, how did you enter the Black Death King's body?" The Atom Man told her all about his adventures with the dead man. Thea could only admire their great adventure. The Black Death King's body was rotten, which indirectly meant that he didn't come to Earth in his prime. Keep a close eye. Seeing that they didn't come to a conclusion, Batman made a concluding speech. Thea, Diana, and Superman smiled bitterly at each other. As expected, the familiar Batman was back. After the war, there were a lot of things to deal with. Although the white lamps in Seaside City dispelled the aura of death, after the black lamps went offline, there were corpses everywhere that needed to be dealt with. This job could only be left to Miss Thea. After all, this job required the coordination of various parties. Superheroes couldn't go door to deliver corpses. Whoever's family was taken away would have to make countless calls to contact millions of families. The workload was so huge and complicated that no one's superpower would be of any use. They had to rely on the government. Superman volunteered to go to the moon to deal with Solomon Grundy's body. The rest of them also split up to deal with their own matters. Thea first went to Central City to seal the passage between the two worlds. The cutting-edge technology laboratory was razed to the ground and 1/5 of the city was destroyed. The Lightning Squad rented an apartment as a temporary shelter. They were all very busy. After sealing the passage, they said a few words and turned to leave. When she arrived at Seaside City, she found that it was like a large funeral home. The local police, the city government, the city council, and all kinds of public welfare organizations were helping, but it was still very busy. The corpses were piled up together and the scene was too messy. Thea hurriedly walked past and saw two young people fighting over it. "This is my father's body." The young man pulled the corpse's leg and wouldn't let go. The other burly man with tattoos all over his body and earrings said in a muffled voice, "This is my boss's body. Look, there's a bullet hole in his leg." Quarrels like this could be seen everywhere. The government actually couldn't figure out why the corpses had come to Seaside City and fooled the people that it was all an alien conspiracy. The people were generally thick-skinned. Many of them were corpses that had been dead for many years, so they weren't very sad. Most of them came with the intention of compensation. That's right. The government and the consortiums controlled by a few superheroes collectively paid a sum of money to take the bodies away and rebury them in the coffins. The Congress didn't stop them either. Everything was handled specially. A huge amount of money was now parked in the Seaside City government's account. After the news was released, millions of people came early in the morning to claim the corpses. There were a total of more than 1 million corpses. Excluding those that were beaten beyond recognition, there were less than 800,000 who could be recognized and whose original appearance could be seen. Therefore, it wasn't surprising that 2 or 3 people would fight over a corpse. Thea had nothing to do with this. She couldn't wear a white lamp and cast a great resurrection spell on the spot to resurrect all the dead and send them back to their homes. That wasn't realistic at all. The government personnel were all old foxes. They could completely distinguish between the real and the fake. She came to Seaside City mainly to deal with the Seven Lantern Corps. The Black Hand was a hot potato. Thea had no interest in this Black Lantern ring that could only be worn after death. She handed it over to the Green Lantern Corps to choose a place to lock up. Green Lantern, Yellow Lantern, and Purple Lantern left in batches. The Saint let a few of his underlings return to Odium while he stayed behind. He felt that the people of Earth were very emotional and was prepared to recruit a few more members. Chapter 861. Recently, the Saint had been pestering Barry to explain the path of hope. Barry was about to get married and was busy every day. He had to work at the police station and fight criminals. How could he have the time? In the end, he chose to reject the Saint's invitation to join the Blue Lamp team. The Saint had no choice but to leave Earth. He wanted to find the Blue Lamp Beast, the Luminous Room Phoenix, a phoenix with 3 faces. When Thea wore the white lamp, she saw its figure. Atakitas took the big blue cat named Spirit Star to kill a few cat abusers. After that, he returned to the 666 fan area with the red lamps. The only one that stayed on Earth was the orange lamp. Thea found Lafliz in a place that looked like a junkyard. This guy had collected a lot of junk, such as old refrigerators, cars, and buckets. Whether they were useful or not, he picked them all up and brought them back. "Hey, what are you doing?" Miss Milady flew in the air and saw Lafliz sitting on a 3-legged stool and writing rapidly. However, his right hand was still holding the lantern, so he could only write with his left hand. With 3 claws, the way he held the pen was like holding a dagger. "I'm writing." Perhaps it was the white light that washed away the murderous aura on Sia. Lafliz raised his head and looked at her, speaking with a calm expression. Thea also felt a lot calmer. She looked at Lafliz's so-called writing materials and laughed in anger. This guy found a roll of toilet paper and wrote a lot of words on it. Fortunately, the light ring had a translation function, so he wrote in English. From shampoo to slippers to trains and planes, this orange lamp wrote more than 10 meters of content on the toilet paper. "You're going to send this to Santa Claus?" Thea pointed at the long piece of paper and asked, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Lafliz was overjoyed. Yes, Baldy said that this Santa Claus can fulfill all wishes. You guys have a really good place here." Thea was speechless. If Luther had a level 9 intelligence, this guy in front of her was not even level 2. He was only a little stronger than the husky because he could talk. If Luther were to stay on Earth and eventually get the orange ring, Miss Milady would not be surprised at all. While Lafliz was still chattering, a portal opened behind him, and Thea pushed him in. Realizing that she was not intimidating enough, she took out the Black Death scythe and waved it at the portal. "Get lost. Go back to your Akolo. If you dare come to Earth again, I'll chop you into pieces." After dealing with the chores, he finally had time to organize his thoughts. He put away his scythe. The Black Death Emperor could use it as a reference, but he couldn't imitate it. Those who learned from him would live, while those who imitated him would die. This was because their paths were completely different. Just like what she said before she wore the white lantern, death was life's friend. The two did not repel each other. Instead, they should be closely related. Peeking at death from life was the path she had chosen. At this moment, on the other side of the earth, Cairo, Egypt, the light of civilization had long since left. Now, there was only a group of ordinary people who were running around for basic necessities of life. The country had no foundation. Externally, the roads were narrow, and there was a lot of garbage piled up in the street corners. Everyone was numb to life. But today, their leisure life seemed to be a little more interesting. A man and a woman were walking on the street dressed strangely. Nowadays, young people wearing short-sleeved shirts and jeans could be seen everywhere on the streets of Cairo. The woman could wear a veil and any kind of clothing. Even so, the man and woman's dressing was still very eye-catching. The man looked like he had just come out of a bathhouse. He only had a white cloth around his waist. His upper body was bare, and the muscles on his arms and chest bulged as if he was full of strength. The woman wore a flowery robe. Instead of walking quickly with her head down, she looked around wantonly. The two spoke in a low voice, but the locals couldn't understand their language at all. The young people might be watching from afar, but some of the more traditional old people couldn't accept the woman's unorthodox behavior at all. An old woman, short and stout, wearing a black robe that covered her feet. Behind the veil was a rigid and serious old face. She scolded the two loudly and kept poking the woman with her finger. The muscular man's eyes were as sharp as a knife. He grabbed the old woman's collar and lifted her up. The young woman whispered a few words to him. The man looked around and saw that everyone avoided his gaze. Only then did he pull the woman away. "Chayara, this is no longer our world. At least it's not the world that I know." The woman was silent. These two were naturally the first-generation Hawkman and Hawkgirl who were resurrected by the river water formed by the white light. At this time, they were still using their original names, Prince Khufu and Priest Chayara. The two's consciousness was very chaotic during the Black Light period. The purple crystal of love, 1,000 years, Horus divine power, and the end metal made there were far stronger than ordinary people. Otherwise, they wouldn't have flown back to Earth with the Black Light ring after being shattered by Thea. They were lucky enough to be resurrected by the white light. However, Earth had changed too much. Ancient Egypt had already entered the history books. The two didn't speak the same language. At first, they flew in the sky without wearing any clothes. When they saw an ordinary person, they wanted to take him as a servant. After that, they were beaten up by the police with all kinds of guns. Only then did they become obedient. Without the end-metal hammer, their strength was limited. After leaving Earth for 4,500 years, they returned again. The two carefully explored the world. Everything was new to them. Their curiosity was more than their fear. "Wait!" Khufu suddenly reached out and stopped Chayara. He looked at the shadow behind him. A tall man in a cape walked out slowly. "Why are you following us?" Khufu's intelligence could only be said to be average. However, after thousands of years of continuous influence of the end metal, both his brain and body had been strengthened. He stuttered and asked in Arabic mixed with some English. These two languages were spoken by people in Egypt. In his opinion, these were the mainstream languages of the current world. Batman, who volunteered to monitor them, was slightly stunned. However, he also knew Arabic. It was always good to be able to communicate. Previously, Thea said that the two were not aliens. Instead, they were natives of Earth. They were people from 4,000 years ago. Now, he just wanted to verify it. Batman wasn't too surprised. In this day and age, there were aliens and goddesses. Adding two more ancient people wouldn't be a big deal. After leaving a warning that he would monitor them and not do anything wrong, Batman prepared to retreat. "Hey, wait, did you see our hammer? I think it's on Earth," Khufu said and gestured. Such a long and wide thing. Batman was such a sneaky person. Why would he return the target's weapon to them? The two of them didn't have names on their foreheads. What if they were bad guys? Chapter 862. Batman comforted the two ancient people very pretentiously, saying that he would look for it and return it to them when he found it. After that, he left Egypt in the Bat Fighter under the two people's gratitude. The two simple ancient people felt that Batman was a good person. They did not know each other, but he was so enthusiastic about helping them. They told him all about the characteristics of the hammer. Realizing that the hammer was extraordinary, the world's #1 detective, Batman, began to analyze all kinds of details. Following the clue of the purple crystal, he found the purple lamp Carol Ferris. After that, he did not need to do much to know that the hammer was in the hands of the young lady. When she received Batman's call, Thea was cleaning up the trash left behind by Lawfleets. Just like Bodhisattva was afraid of the cause, mortals were afraid of the effect. The more powerful she was now, the more cowardly she became. Based on her personality in the past, she could just open a portal and throw this messy trash mountain to another planet. However, she did not dare to do so now. What if it caused an ecological disaster? What if some substances and the planet had a violent reaction? The destruction of a planet would also affect her. White Lamp was very picky. In order to prevent all kinds of accidents, she could only find a company under her to deal with these things. When she heard Batman ask for the hammer, she did not insist that she did not have it. According to fantasy, Eagle Hero and Eagle Girl were people who had great karma for this world. Do they want it, or do you want it? Thea thought about it before speaking. Batman had a criminal record. It was not impossible to return it to Eagle Hero and Eagle Girl, but giving it to Batman would require some consideration. This thing is not magical equipment, is it? No, it's pure metal. It won't explode and affect the timeline, right? No, it's pure metal. The spaceships that landed on Earth before were all like this. Thea was silent after saying that. Batman was just short of saying, "Hurry up and throw it to me so that I can study it. Bruce, you can research it, but remember to return it to them. They are not bad people. They might be superheroes in the future." After that, Thea sensed Batman's location and opened a portal. She threw the Hawkgirl's hammer, which had lost all of its spiritual chi after smashing the Black Death Emperor, to him. As for the Hawkman's hammer, it was gone. After thinking for a while, she threw the Horus's bracer over. It was useless to her, but it would be of great help to the Hawkman. Under her repeated pleas, Batman promised that as long as they didn't do anything bad, he would return the money to them as soon as possible. Thea had reservations about this. Batman was similar to her. Most likely it will also be a hollow hammer, right? Thea was very confident in Batman's black technology, and metal was not a problem for him. On the home planet of the razor-sharp insectoids, deep within the planet's core, there was a spacious prison cell. Kerrigan had taken it out to entertain the nameless guardian, who was here as a guest. Huge chains hung him in the air, and a few insectoids were injecting hallucinogens through their tentacles. The guardian's old face was like a piece of wood, without any change, even though his consciousness was immersed in various illusory worlds. How is it? Thea had been busy for 2 days before she remembered that there was still a captive here. She quickly teleported over, ready to study the guardian's eternal life. This old guy is very stubborn. He didn't give me any useful information. Kerrigan was a little scared. She had spent a lot of effort to capture this guardian, and lost a lot of her subordinates. She did not expect that after being tortured repeatedly, the guardian would be completely unmoved. Thea looked at the little blue man and sneered. Other than Gans said, the rest of these guys were the scourge of the universe. She had no pressure to deal with them. After thinking for a while, she said, "How about this? Focus on one thing and ask for his name. The reason why he is silent now is because his emotions have been stripped away. However, he will not completely give up on his name. As long as he remembers his name, the rest will be done naturally." Although she was skeptical, Kerrigan still went to carry out the task. In less than 10 minutes, she ran over and said that she had found something. His name is Haruba. He is a student of some big shot. He comes from planet Mardis. That seems to be their home planet. Kerrigan told her the information she had obtained, as if she was asking for credit. Thea looked at the guardian, who was completely unconscious. She separated a strand of her spiritual power and began to read his memory. His psychological defense collapsed completely. The little blue man's memory seemed to be unguarded and could now be viewed at will. 10 billion years of life had allowed them to experience too many things. Thea picked and chose. With her divine attainment, it took her a full half an hour to read all the memories. She knew some things, such as the guardian stripping away his own emotions to create the first light. She did not know some things, such as Haruba's teacher being the famous Kalana. 10 billion years ago, the Mardis people were the earliest life forms born in the universe. They developed a powerful technological civilization that far surpassed the current era, surpassing Batman, Luthor, and Brainiac. As the leading scientist among his people, Kalana's thirst for knowledge was unparalleled. He tried to explore the mystery of the origin of the universe. This guy's black technology had reached a level that no one before him could surpass. He invented the cosmic probe and saw a giant hand holding the image of the origin of the universe. Just like how Batman inadvertently created the dark multiverse, Kalana's reckless actions also created the multiverse and the antimatter universe. In order to monitor the countless parallel universes, Watchers and Anti-Watchers were born on a conceptual level, and it lasted until today. Kalana and his people, including Ganser and Zed, had shrunk from their normal height to their current height of 3 inches. God knows what the big shot was thinking. He might have thought that the essence was condensed. When he shrunk his body, he gave them eternal life. They were older than the old gods and the new gods combined. The spirit of existence was born on Earth, but they were the first life forms in the universe. The little blue men now were at least 1,000 times weaker than when they were at their peak. Only Kalana and Ganser had seen the image of the first light's giant hand. Haruba had only heard of it. However, they were still able to seal the first light after they shrunk. Judging from her memories, Thea felt that she was on par with the first light, or even slightly weaker. The Black Death Emperor could kill the first light instantly, but she was not at that level. Keep him alive. Don't let him escape. Thea did not kill this living dictionary of the universe, but she did not let him go either. This group of people had caused a lot of trouble in the universe. Killing him would be a waste. After leaving the main planet, she took a stroll around Earth before heading to the starting point of time, the base of the Endless Family. Her ranking had risen by a small amount, which meant that peeking into death from life was not a problem. The reason why she did not improve much was that she did not have much understanding of life. 75th place. The Black Death Emperor had dropped to 230th place. He would not be able to catch up to her in a short time. This made her sigh in relief. Chapter 863. Now she had two choices. One was to continue pursuing the Death Realm, while the other was to do the opposite and walk the path of death. There were no shortcuts to walking the path of life. After all, the spirit of existence was not her. The life equation would be of great help, but that would require her to break through the wall of origin. It could be said that danger and opportunity coexisted. However, the Death Realm could be achieved by burning willpower. This time, she had saved the world by herself. The entire universe was grateful to her, and she had more willpower than ever before. Between the two choices, she chose the latter. Let's begin. Thea divided her mind into 3 parts. One part stared at her ranking, one part burned willpower, and the remaining part began to accept the various experiences of death. A large number of thoughts entered her mind. She kept those that suited her and abandoned those that did not. Her aura changed as well. Sometimes it was cold, sometimes it was gloomy. In short, it was not sunny at all. Slowly, she stopped paying attention to her ranking. Instead, she put on the white light ring and relied on the other intelligent beings to share her negative emotions. She had used up all her willpower. It took her a long time to get rid of the haze in her heart. F***CK. As expected, shortcuts aren't easy to take. Thea could only feel her head aching. It was a real headache. The willpower of the beings had indeed brought her countless experiences. However, there were all sorts of things, and not all of them were suitable for her. She was dazzled by her choices. She felt that one made sense and another made sense as well. When she opened her eyes, she did not know how much time had passed. 60th. She looked up at her ranking. Thea was satisfied. She had a vague feeling that the death deity position was very close to her. It was only half a step away. After obtaining the death deity position, she could call herself the death goddess. This top-tier deity position would allow her to grow explosively. It would not be a problem for her to rival the Heavenly Father and Darkseid. If it were before the Endless Family, she would have been so happy to obtain the death deity position that she would not sleep for the entire night. Now she felt very faint. The death goddess was nothing. Only by removing the word goddess would she be truly awesome. She sighed. She needed to settle down for a while and take that step with her own strength. After returning to Earth, she hovered in the air for a long time without alerting anyone. Finally, she mustered her courage and went to meet a person, Purgatory Island. Ever since Yao Fei left the island, there had been no signs of human habitation. Some of the animals on the island had sensed the waves of divine power emanating from her body, and without exception, all chose to hide. Thea took off her shoes and strolled on the beach. Looking at the ground she walked on, she felt a little disappointed. The sand that she stepped on was stained with a trace of death aura. Once the sand was collected and slightly refined, it would become a powerful semi-divine tool. Shaking his head and smiling foolishly, he looked in the direction and flew toward the southern end of the island. This was the place where Oliver had first set foot on Purgatory Island. Old Robert was buried here. But now that the tomb had been opened from the inside, Black Lantern made Old Robert's bones fly back to Star City. After dark, Oliver buried his father in the Quinn family graveyard. But Thea knew that they were just bones. Old Robert's soul was still on this island. At first, the tomb was very simple and crude. At that time, Oliver was a good-for-nothing. He simply dug a hole and buried himself. Later on, due to various reasons, it was not repaired. When the Black Lantern was unearthed, it completely destroyed this place. Thea picked up a wooden stick nearby and gathered the dirt together. Then, she hugged her knees and sat in front of the tomb. "I can't resurrect you. I'm sorry." After a long time, she finally thought of this sentence. "I know. I don't blame you." Old Robert's shadow walked out of thin air and sat beside her. Thea was not surprised. The goddess of soul, half a step away from the goddess of death. How could she be afraid of ghosts? She chose her words carefully. I'm not." She wanted to tell old Robert about her past. She felt guilty towards him. Even though he was well aware of it, it would be different if she said it out loud. However, she couldn't find the words to say. Old Robert stroked her hair. "I know. It's my fault. I wronged Moira first. You'll always be my daughter." "You, Oliver, Moira, you're doing well. I'm satisfied. I don't blame him. He's my best friend. I'm happy for him. He has a chance to make up for all his mistakes." Thea knew that the he old Robert was referring to was Malcolm. The two of them did have a deep friendship, but fate had played them. "But I have the ability to resurrect you. A little backlash is nothing to me. Your life shouldn't stop here," Thea said, pointing at the deserted island. "My mission is over. You've all done well. That's enough, my daughter." "Father." She watched old Robert slowly disappear into thin air and turn into a white light that shot into the sky. She did not speak for a long time. A normal person's soul could not survive for 10 years. It was her obsession that kept old Robert. Now she had completely let it go. Looking at the place where old Robert disappeared, Thea smiled. Heaven could not wait to take him away. With old Robert's past, he was no different from a normal capitalist. Heaven? What a joke. Could those people who died under the Quinn Corporation's brass knuckles be fake? Heaven did something so illegal. It was obvious that they cared about politics. If she took half a step forward, she would be the goddess of death and the lord of the underworld. She would be on the same level as Heaven, the new creation star, and the apocalypse star. If she did him a favor now, everything would be easier in the future. She shook her head and stopped thinking about this mess. She started a fire not far away. The sea breeze blew, and she sat quietly for the night until the morning sun rose. She looked at her own path. Just a little bit more. There was one more thing that she needed to do. In a small town in Wisconsin, there were less than 20,000 residents. In order not to appear rude, Thea drove a car out of her local business. The doorbell rang for a while, and a woman who could be considered pretty opened the door. Thea smiled. "Hi, we've met before. It was 11 years ago." The young woman was very nervous. She stood in front of the door helplessly. She looked behind Thea for a long time. Seeing that she was alone, she sighed in relief. "Please come in." "Thank you." Thea looked at the furnishings in the room. Many of the furniture were old, but they were clean and organized. There was a picture of the young woman and a little boy on the wall. "What's your purpose here?" The young woman looked at her looking at the picture. Her tone was a bit unfriendly, but because of her personality, she could not be forceful. "William. I'm here for William. He's my brother's son and my father's grandson." Sia's words were very direct. If it weren't for the fact that she had a child and had some blood ties with Oliver, she wouldn't have been able to care about him. This child was old Robert's direct descendant. She had an obligation to do something for him. Chapter 864. He's my son. He has nothing to do with you. The woman was a little agitated. However, under Thea's indifferent gaze, she shrank back. "You've misunderstood me. The child is still yours. I just think that the child should know the truth. If he just wants to be an ordinary person, he can. If he wants to become extraordinary, It's not difficult for me. She wasn't exaggerating. After all, first light and troublemakers could change the reality of ordinary people. Although the effect of such changes was very short, Big Brother Fate was still alive and well. Without his consent, the result of a casual change would be corrected by fate. Without the initiative to solidify, changing reality wasn't as good as it seemed. Thea wasn't far from that realm. She couldn't make a big change. However, after making a small change and solidifying it, it would be easy for her cheap nephew to add a talent. Even if he was a super useless person, she could still force him to improve. Now, it was up to them to make a choice. Call the child out, or you can go in and talk to him. He's eavesdropping by the door. The young woman hurried into the bedroom to negotiate with the child. Thea waited leisurely. To her, this was just a mission. She didn't have any opinions about the other person's choice. Not long after, the young woman came out with the little boy. The little boy was about the same age as Damien. However, his eyes were filled with confusion and helplessness, like a flower in a greenhouse. "William, I'm your aunt. You can come to me if you have any trouble." She reached out and stroked the child's head. The child's nervousness eased a little. "All right, tell me your choice." The young woman hugged her son. "I don't love Oliver. I was just confused back then. We won't go with you." Thea nodded. She welcomed the woman's choice. After all, she was close to Shadow. Now that she was pregnant, she brought home another woman for her brother. No matter how she looked at it, she was going to cause trouble. "Okay. But William, he's very smart. He should receive an excellent education." After some discussion, they finally agreed on everything. The child would still have the same surname as his mother. Thea only needed to ensure that he would receive excellent high school and university resources. The mother and son continued to live a peaceful life. Thea only had to make a few phone calls. "Are you still going to be an ordinary person?" On the way back, she was deep in thought. Even though she vaguely mentioned that the child had some talent, the mother and son still chose to reject it. Not everyone liked superpowers and wanted to be superheroes. The mother and son just wanted to live like ordinary people. Thea did not say anything more. Leaving the town, she could say that she had completed all her tasks. She respected the wishes of the mother and son, protected them, and let them live a peaceful life. That was enough. Now, she only needed an opportunity, and success would follow naturally. After thinking for a while, Thea realized that it was a little arbitrary for her to make a decision in private. After all, the child's father was still alive. She didn't ask the young woman's name from the beginning to the end. The young woman didn't want to marry into the Quinn family, so she avoided a lot of drama. From all aspects, she was a good woman. Thea felt that she should tell Oliver that this was his son and he had the right to know. But no matter what, this required some skills and methods. She remembered that some time ago, everyone in the Righteous Alliance knew that the grandson of the Barry family had come to their door. A bunch of heroes were laughing so hard that they almost couldn't breathe. Among them, Green Arrow Oliver laughed the loudest. In order to save her brother's face, she felt that she had to study how to say it. Two heads were better than one. She took a step forward. She wanted to discuss it with Diana. As a specially invited expert of the Louvre, Diana also had an independent office and assistant here. The young lady walked in with familiarity. As soon as she entered the door, she found that the atmosphere was not right. The Valkyrie was sulking. "Who provoked you? I'll vent your anger for you." She was very confident. In a place like Earth, she was very confident. "That guy is so rude. It's hard to believe that he is a prince." In the office, Diana endured and endured, but she still complained to Thea. The matter was not complicated. A few days ago, out of kindness, she introduced a job to the weak duo, who had now changed their name to Carter and Kendra. The combination of an ancient Egyptian prince and a priestess was more than enough to be an expert of ancient civilization in the Louvre. At least that was what she thought. In the end, he was taken aback. What modern people thought was a sacred weapon was just a daily decoration in Kendra's mouth. What gorgeous weapon! Carter said that it was a ceremonial weapon used by the guards. In short, it was just a pile of junk. The two ancient people spoke bluntly and bluntly. They scolded the experts and professors of the Louvre and finally parted on bad terms. After pouring out a lot of grievances, Diana was much more comfortable. Today, she had a single ponytail, wearing a beige top with a skirt and high heels. It was a completely different style from when she was fighting. She took off her shoes and put her feet on her lap. "Give me a massage." Thea used her fingers to gently press her leg muscles. With their physique, they would not be tired even if they stood for 10 years. It was just that Diana was too strong and too self-disciplined. She always took it as her responsibility to protect mankind. She was clearly mentally young, but she pretended that she had seen through the world. She could only show the expression of a little girl when the two of them were alone. The young lady massaged from knee to ankle and finally scratched the soles of her feet twice. "Ha!" The goddess of war rolled her eyes at her. Thea felt that she could give her a score of 99. "Your breath seems to be longer?" Diana wanted to say darker, but it did not seem like it when she looked closely. "That's right. After the battle with the Black Death Emperor, I have a deeper understanding of death. But I'm here today to discuss something else with you." She skipped the beginning and the end and told her about Oliver's illegitimate son. Diana's face was full of gossip. "He has a son? He's already 10 years old? Was the child smart? How tall was he? How fat was he? Could he shoot an arrow?" Thea had done a lot of research, and she could answer all of them without any problems. Half an hour later, when they talked about whether they should call the police or learn martial arts to fight back, the two goddesses realized that they had gone off topic. "We should tell Oliver the truth." Diana could not think of a good excuse in the end. The two of them decided to talk about it together. When they found Oliver, they realized that the archery club was crowded. A bunch of people they knew were here. Big Sister, Miss Thea, Sister Thea, Sister Diana. A bunch of people greeted them. They looked at Damien, Tim, Raven, and Cassie. The two goddesses were confused. These people did not keep in touch with each other. They usually lived in different places. Why did they come to Green Arrow's place today? Chapter 865. At that moment, they heard the sound of continuous fighting coming from the room. They turned a corner and saw Oliver fighting with someone with 2 bamboo knives. His opponent was Nightwing Dick Grayson. He was good at using short sticks, and his bamboo knives were equally fierce. The two of them were evenly matched, and it was hard to tell who would win. Sia beckoned Damien to her side. She asked him carefully and found out the whole story. Tim was going to set up his own superhero organization. Compared to the calm Dick and Jason, who advocated strength, he preferred to use his brain and unite a group of people to fight for a goal. In his opinion, this was the true way of being a hero. To set up an organization, there had to be a place to train and communicate with teammates. After leaving Batman, he was going to do this on his own. Without many choices, he set his sights on Green Arrow. Although Quinn Construction wasn't as valuable as the technology companies in Thea's hands, it couldn't withstand the disasters that happened every day in the United States. In one dark night, Seaside City and a third of Central City were destroyed, as well as a dozen small and medium-sized cities. Now, real estate had become an important part of the national economy. In short, Oliver, who controlled Quinn Construction, had a lot of houses in his hands. Tim set the location of the future team in San Francisco. It was far from the territory of traditional heroes, but the crime rate wasn't low. It was very suitable for the new team. Oliver agreed without hesitation, but since he had nothing to do, he made a request. He wanted to fight with him. There was no gambling and there was no bullying of the poor. No matter who won or lost, the building could be handed over to Tim. Oliver just wanted to take the opportunity to warn the young people not to be arrogant and complacent. The result of the battle wasn't too surprising. The young people who used martial arts were beaten black and blue by Oliver. Even if Tim went up personally, it was useless. Even if Oliver didn't use a bow and arrow, he wouldn't be a match for him in close combat. Helpless, he called Dick. It had to be said that Nightwing's seniority had always been an awkward topic. He had been fighting crime for more than a decade. It was more than enough to say that he was an old hero, but considering that he and Batman were like father and son, it wasn't good to compare the two. It was even more nonsense to say that he was a young hero. He was 2 years younger than Oliver and 2 years older than Thea. He wasn't young at all. After taking off the Batman alias, the people in the Alliance had asked him to stay in the Alliance and use the codename Nightwing, but he couldn't make up his mind. Now, he had fallen to the point of standing up for a bunch of kids. Thinking about it, it was quite interesting. Thea only needed a few glances to know that Nightwing was no match for her brother. As the successor to Batman's legacy, Nightwing's various abilities had reached the pinnacle. There was no doubt that he was at the peak of the second string. If Oliver was at his original level, he wouldn't be able to defeat him without using a bow and arrow. Unfortunately, his brother had been strengthened by Thea several times. Even a slight difference in his physical fitness could lead to a completely different outcome. Although Oliver was also trying his best to suppress it so that he wouldn't jump 3 meters high, he couldn't control it so precisely. When he saw Thea and Diana, he hurriedly stopped and the battle ended in a draw. After sending off a bunch of children, he asked the two of them why they were here. Of course, Thea wouldn't say anything. Her mother and I already knew the truth, but we kept it from you. She blamed it all on magic and insisted that it was divination. What? I have a son outside. He's already 10 years old. Oliver, who was wiping his sweat with a towel, was so shocked that he almost jumped up. To be precise, he's 11 years old. Thea finished telling him this shocking news and wrote down the child's name and address on a sticky note. She also left a recent photo. It was a photo of the mother and son that she took at the young woman's house. He could do whatever he wanted with it. This woman, I don't seem to remember her. Oliver looked at the photo for a long time and was a little speechless. There were too many romantic debts when he was young. He really couldn't remember. Thea clapped her hands and left with Diana. What happened next had nothing to do with her. Diana went back to work. She thought about it. It had been a while since she went to the company. It was a good time to go back and take a look. She entered her office and finished her chores as quickly as possible. After reading a few comics about her and Diana, the secretary led someone in. Who's this? She was reading with great interest. She raised her eyebrows and glanced at the person. She didn't recognize him, so she asked casually. The secretary smiled faintly, and the man beside her almost cried. Boss, it's me. Thea looked away from the computer and took a closer look. He was dressed like a tramp, with thick eyebrows and big eyes. Wasn't this Boston Brand? In Thea's eyes, the dead always looked the same after they died. Red tights, black eyeshadow like a ghost. Now that he was a living person, she didn't recognize him at first. Fortunately, the mental connection was still there. She pretended to be enlightened. What's the matter? You can't live anymore, so you're here to ask for money, right? The truth was a little strange. Boston Brand's soul frequency changed a lot. The yellow light didn't recognize him. He was neither big nor small. He was a hero, but he couldn't rob people. Now he really couldn't live anymore. The most important thing was that this guy had a girlfriend. She was the younger sister of the Warhawk and White Dove sisters, the girl who inherited the name of White Dove, Dorn Granger. According to his original words, the girl was very attractive to him, and he started to attack her crazily. Now everything was ready, except for a little money. Thea didn't say anything. She wrote him a check and took the flowers. She also found someone to help him get some social documents, such as Social Security and driver's license. After all, he had been dead for a few years and all these documents had been cancelled. Although Sia had a feeling that this guy would die soon, well, it was better to stay alive for now. Time passed quickly. A month passed quickly, and she still didn't find the opportunity. However, a few things happened in this month. Tim Drake established the Young Titans. The members were himself, Wonder Girl Cassie, Pulse Bart Allen, the Big Lowly Raven, Animal Boy, Blue Beetle, Martian Maiden, and arms dealer Kuroi Harper, who was 2 years older. Damien was rejected by him with the excuse that he was too young. In fact, he didn't want Batman to be alone. They were father and son, and they could take care of each other. Originally, he wanted Nightwing Dick Grayson to lead the team. At least he could get past Batman's disguise. In the end, Dick rejected the mission and only said that he and Starfire would help. As for the other matter, it could be considered both major and minor at the same time. In the ruins of Seaside City, a white lantern appeared. A few heroes took turns to take it, but no one picked it up. In the end, Thea took it easily. This lantern finally solved the urgent problem. Her white lantern ring was almost out of power. The protective net that was set up before was also effective. The Black Death Emperor's breath didn't cause any pollution to Earth, and it was completely avoided. As for the mission that the Spirit of Existence gave to the resurrected, the young mistress didn't participate. In a place that ordinary people couldn't see, something else happened. Although the antimatter cannon severely injured the Black Death Emperor, it also destroyed a part of the timeline. Time had self-healing properties, and with the help of the Time Master Council to fix the mistake, she didn't take it to heart at first. She didn't expect the loophole to recover so slowly. The elderly version of the Golden Pioneer said that he couldn't do anything. Thea didn't have any good ideas either. The counter-supervisor's strength was above hers. She couldn't resist the antimatter cannon that gathered the energy of a universe. With such a big hole, someone must have passed through the timeline. Thea was depressed. She bragged to Batman that the path she walked was a path, but it was still in her ears when she was slapped in the face. She could only deal with the uninvited guests as they came, and wait for the loophole to recover naturally. Chapter 866. In Diana's apartment, the two were fooling around when the phone suddenly rang and Batman's voice came through. "Both of you, there's an emergency here. Please come to the watchtower immediately." The two hurriedly changed their clothes and rushed to the watchtower space base. They were the first to arrive. Batman nodded gently to them and continued to operate a pile of computer equipment. Seeing that there were no outsiders around, Thea couldn't help but say, "Bruce, you should rest. You're too nervous to analyze things day and night." "I'm fine. Someone has to do this work." Thea shrugged her shoulders at Diana, indicating that she couldn't do anything. This gentleman was full of energy and had nothing to do. Let's just leave him be. Soon after, Superman and Green Lantern Kyle Rayner arrived at the same time. "Just the few of us? The threat is from space?" Diana saw that no one else came and asked a little strangely. After all, the Justice League had always advanced and retreated together. 3 light-years away from Earth, there are more than 100 unidentified objects. I calculated their various mass and thermal energy reactions and trajectories. They are spaceships and their target is Earth. Batman opened a few screens and pointed to them. "I don't know, never seen it." Noticing that Batman was staring at her, Thea shook her head. There were so many civilizations in the universe. How could she know them all? Batman looked at Kyle Rayner again. The Green Lantern, who was an artist, smiled. "I'm a new Green Lantern. Through the screen, the ring can't scan the information." His meaning was clear. "I'm a newcomer. I don't know the people and things in the universe. I don't know the famous ones and I don't know the unknown ones. You don't have to care about my opinion. Shall I go take a look?" Superman volunteered. Of course, he wouldn't let him fight alone. Leaving Batman to do the logistics, they flew directly over. Originally, Thea wanted to teleport over, but Superman felt that it was better to be cautious since they didn't know if they were friends or foes. Not long after, they saw these unidentified objects on a planet outside the solar system. Batman guessed correctly. These were indeed spaceships and they were battle type. The spaceships were docked on the ground, and many humanoid creatures were resupplying. Daxam's battleship? The few of them hid in the shadows. Kyle Rayner scanned them with the ring and quickly got the answer. Unfortunately, the ring was very cold. It didn't ask, but Kyle Rayner didn't know how to ask. He could only turn his head and look at the few people around him. Where is Daxam from? How is it compared to Earth? Batman, who was far away in the watchtower, hurriedly asked. Planet Daxam is the sister planet of Krypton. They should have disappeared into the universe with the explosion of Krypton, Superman said uncertainly. His knowledge was self-taught in the Fortress of Solitude, and he was not sure if he was right. He could only look at Thea. The young mistress had obtained 10 billion years of memories from the guardian Haruba. There were not many things in the universe that she did not know. Superman is right. Daxam, like Krypton, revolves around a red sun. But their system was different from that of Krypton. If Krypton was the United States, Then Daxam was the United States, arrogant, powerful, and possessive. According to the classification of civilizations in the universe, Krypton is a level 8 civilization, and they are level 7. Earth should be level 3, not level 4. This doesn't seem to be good news. Do they also have the physique to absorb the yellow sun? Batman asked abruptly. In theory, yes, but not to the extent of Krypton. They are distant relatives of Krypton, and part of their genes are the same. I'll go stop them. Superman panicked. There were more than 100 battleships, and there were at least 10,000 people in total. If everyone could be strengthened, and with the power system, could Earth still be saved? Thea hurriedly pulled him back. Don't be afraid. They have weaknesses too. They are afraid of lead, and, she said uncertainly, I see that they are shrouded in the air of death. They are either dying or already dead. Oh! As soon as she finished speaking, one of the battleships burst into flames. The violent explosion blew up 3 or 4 other battleships around it. In the flames, a figure slowly flew out. Many of the Daxramites, who looked no different from Earthlings, raised their weapons and attacked the figure madly. More battleships began to take off, ready to use their cannons to deal with this uninvited guest. However, the attacker was extremely fast. It was as if he could appear in several places at the same time. In the blink of an eye, he destroyed more than 10 battleships. It was hard to imagine that he was going against more than 100 battleships alone, and he planned to wipe them all out. He is slaughtering. We can't just watch, Superman said and rushed out. Thea pursed her lips. These Daxramites were not good people. They were here to invade Earth. Why did you save them? You have people helping you and you want to stop them? However, to prevent Diana from saying that she went deep into the darkness again, she still flew up. She flew slowly. Diana knew what her lover was thinking. She did not want to make things difficult for Thea, and she also slowed down. Kyle Rayner was just an ordinary artist a month ago. To be honest, he was not confident in fighting against aliens. Naturally, he was not fast either. The 3 of them had not even flown 2 miles when they saw Superman being hit back at a speed faster than when he had rushed up. Thea reached out and pulled him back. That person is so strong. Superman rubbed his chin in disbelief. Thea did not have that much sympathy. The Daxramites were all battleships. They were obviously preparing to invade Earth. Now that there was a kind-hearted person helping, she would not have to dirty her hands. She looked at the figure in the distance. He was almost 2 meters tall, with messy black hair and a red shirt tied around his waist. His skin was pale green, and there was an S carved deep into his muscles on his chest. He was rough and barbaric, but gentle and elegant. The 2 completely different temperaments mixed together. The attacker glanced at them and did not stop attacking. When he got closer, Diana and Kyle Rayner saw that this guy had a teleportation ability. He could also use some strange method to break down the energy weapons that attacked him, as well as various creatures. The energy weapons were broken down with a wave of his hand, and the Daxramites were turned back into atoms and disappeared completely. Stop your massacre! Superman caught his breath and rushed up again. He did not know why, but he felt that the other party made him very uncomfortable. Unfortunately, his strength that could move stars and his iron fist that could break through mountains hit the attacker's chest. The other party did not feel anything. Like an indestructible wall, he did not take half a step back. Instead, he frowned and looked at Superman. As if a little annoyed, the attacker grabbed Superman's shoulder with his left hand and threw him out as if he was throwing trash. Superman's figure became transparent and suddenly disappeared from their sight. Child's play, Thea sneered. A warrior and a mage using teleportation? She grabbed at the void with her right hand, broke through the spatial barrier, and pulled Superman out of the spatial gap again. Who is he? He can actually repel Superman head-on. Kyle Rayner was a little dizzy. These few attacks, whether it was the attack speed or the attack pattern, were a little beyond imagination. Who is he? Genetically, he is a Kryptonian. He has all the abilities of a Kryptonian. In addition, he can teleport, control energy, and maybe other abilities. I think we can call him a super Kryptonian, Thea said with a hint of curiosity in her eyes. Chapter 867. What Kryptonian? Superman was thrown into the dimension like a piece of merchandise and then pulled out by Sia. He was a little dizzy after 2 consecutive short-distance translocations. He did not hear a few words clearly, but he heard the word Kryptonian. That's right. Thea pointed to the logo on the attacker's chest. Look at this guy's chest. It's obviously an inverted triangle with a sharp weapon and an S symbol. It means that he's a loyal worshipper of the Iyer family. She wanted to say loyal dog, but she changed the word in the end. There are survivors of the Iyer family? Batman's voice came from afar. It sounded a little distorted. He couldn't be blamed for being puzzled. The planet had exploded, and how many people from the Iyer family had escaped one after another? Superman, Supergirl, Krypton the pet dog, and now another guy popped out. You guys are awesome, don't you know that? If Thea could hear Batman's thoughts, she would have told him that Superman's father was still alive. Supergirl's father, Superman's uncle, was also alive, but no one knew if he was alive or dead in this time and space. In short, the Iyer family was the best Kryptonian family. They had been delayed for a while, and the attackers had destroyed all the warships of Daxam. They resisted tenaciously, but unfortunately, in front of the Super Kryptonians, it didn't take much effort. They gave up resistance and fought desperately. When the last couple, who were suspected to be the leaders, were blown to ashes by the attackers, the fleet from afar was completely destroyed. What was their original purpose? Were they here to invade Earth or to learn? It didn't matter because they were turned to ashes in the fire and explosion. The attackers were ruthless, and no one was left alive. Who should go? Or you talk to him. Maybe he's your relative? Thea put her hands in her pockets and said to Superman leisurely. The attacker came in front of them, and his eyes focused on Superman. I'm Chier. Your father is the person I respect the most. He is my teacher, and you look exactly like him. Then he pointed at the mark on his chest. I'm proud of this. That's why I've crossed the sea of stars to find you. You will be the hope of Krypton. You are not the first person to tell me this. I have answered you before, and I will say it again. Krypton is gone. Superman thought of General Zod, but he did not let his guard down. Krypton is a great civilization. It can point out the direction for the development of the universe. If we work together, we can fix this mistake. Come and help me. Ku-Er was very calm, as if everything was under his control. There was a hint of pain in his eyes. Although he spoke very sincerely, Superman still saw some uncertainty in his eyes. He firmly shook his head and refused. It seemed like a gentle opening, but just when the few of them thought that he was going to use his mouth to escape, the guy named Sure-Air unexpectedly emitted wisps of green gas from his palm, and his entire body seemed to have disappeared into thin air. Before the few of them could understand what this meant, Thea heard a gust of wind behind her head. Is this guy trying to sneak up on me? How laughable. It's just an alien with a little superpower. She put away her original playful smile, twisted her waist, turned around, and raised her leg to meet the incoming fist. The two forces of different attributes collided fiercely. The opponent's attack was very pure, and it was an extremely strong physical force. Thea was in a hurry to fight back, and she did not have time to use her full strength. The two sides were tied. Superman was angry at his relative's despicable behavior. After talking about his father for so long, his father taught him how to sneak up on others. This is blasphemy. With a loud shout, he rushed out. Diana was even faster than him. Without saying a word, the Valkyrie drew her 2 swords and slashed at Ku-Er without using a lasso or a shield. Ku-Er seemed to have expected this. Before Diana could draw her swords, he had already reached out a hand, grabbed Diana, and threw her to the other side. At this time, Kyle Rayner had just raised the ring when he was hit. Huh? Thea felt that it was very strange. The speed of this place was not that fast compared to them, but Diana was subdued in one move. This was a bit exaggerated. With the improvement of the realm of death, even her necromancy spells were strengthened 100 times, but considering Superman and the others' perception, Thea did not use her current strongest means. Without time to think, she opened her left hand, and a giant hand appeared above Ku-Er's head, and the giant hand slammed down with an irresistible force. But Air was still calm and unhurried. His hands struggled to tear open a crack on the top of his head. Just as he tore open the crack, Sia's giant hand had already smashed down. The two of them seemed to be acting, and their coordination was extremely ingenious. How is this possible? Thea's first thought was that this guy could read minds, but she quickly overturned this conclusion. She was a half-step goddess of death. If she resisted, even a great demon like the three palace demons could not do it. Then, she thought that it might be a prophetic ability, but after 3 consecutive moves, her opponent was able to take the initiative and make her attack disappear. She had never heard of anyone who could predict 100% in a battle. This was almost to the realm of omniscience and omnipotence. If he really had this realm, he could kill Thea in one move, and there was no need to attack slowly. The most likely options were eliminated, and the least likely option was the truth. You have experienced these things? What is happening now is not the first time for you, right? You can predict our every move because you have experienced it before. Your timeline is wrong. Thea felt that it was very troublesome. This guy was obviously a variable that jumped out after the antimatter cannon broke her timeline. Seeing that Air was silent, Thea knew that her guess was not far from the truth. After all, her strength was close to the ceiling, and there were only a few who could be stronger than her, and there was definitely no Kryptonian among them. It seems that I guessed right. In my present, in your past, you have fought with me. Where did you find the courage to stand in front of me again? Thea's momentum began to rise. She spoke disdainfully, but in her heart, she had already raised the threat level of her opponent to the highest level. Without something to rely on, she did not think that Air could defeat her. Sure enough, Thea released 3 spells in a row. 2 of them were transferred away by her opponent, and he might not have seen the remaining one. However, he also relied on Superman to block the shot and survived without much effort. Air's attacks were equally fierce. Diana could attack him, but Superman and Kyle Rayner were completely passive. Thea had to constantly rescue them, and the battle scene was extremely ugly for a while. Your Majesty, this is the 3rd time we have fought. I know your attacking methods better than you think. Air spoke to her for the first time and exposed her true life level. Chapter 868. One had to know that the people of the Righteous Alliance never called them goddesses. The term god was very vague to modern people. Plus, they didn't put on airs and just joked around. No one took the term god seriously. For example, Batman Luthor treated the gods as a high-level life form. Other than the little blue people and the holy walkers who had received her favor, in this universe, there were very few people who called her a goddess. Seeing her frown, Shire smiled and attacked Kyle Rayner with all his strength. Thea could only use her weakness to attack Shire's strength and compete with this super Kryptonian. She had never felt so aggrieved before. She had always been the one who had all the information and defeated the enemy. Now the tables had turned, and she was being defeated by Shire, who was obviously weaker than her. How could she be described as depressed? You fought us 3 times? Why? Diana hurriedly blocked Shire's attack with her shield. She knew that her lover's strength was his weakness. On the other side, Superman also began to attack. With the cooperation of several people, they tried to take the initiative. Shire was obviously at a disadvantage, but he didn't panic. Air, I sincerely invited you to rebuild Krypton, but you rejected me 3 times. Your soul has been corrupted by Earth. You are no longer a Kryptonian. You are a Kryptonian, a disgrace to the Air family. Shire became angrier as he spoke. He seemed to have thought of something and roared. He grabbed Superman's collar and smashed his head on Superman's nose. Bright red blood flowed down the corner of his mouth and chin. Thea hurriedly pulled him away by the back of his collar. Both she and Shire were strong, and neither of them let go. With a tearing sound, a large piece of Superman's uniform was torn from his collar to his chest, revealing a patch of chest hair. Just as he saved Brother Superman, Kyle Rayner was sent flying with a punch on the other side. Ark was very smart. 70 to 80% of his attacks landed on Kyle Rayner and Superman. Thea and Diana could only provide support from behind. Thea couldn't use many of her dark spells, and she didn't know if her opponents were aware of her remaining spells. In addition, she had to save people and take care of their self-esteem. Thea couldn't let the two men hide behind her and watch, so the battle became extremely intense. Kryptonite, don't worry about me. Use kryptonite. Superman was punched into the ground again. Chi-Air seemed to be venting his anger, and he even stomped heavily on Superman's head. Superman's voice came from the ground, and it sounded a little muffled. Kryptonite? Thea searched her ring for a long time, but she couldn't find it. The Kryptonians were not a threat to her. She was not Luthor Batman, who carried kryptonite in his pocket every day when he went to the toilet. However, she had a lot of things in her ring. It would take her at least 180 minutes to find such a small stone. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw a green light for Kyle Rayner. She might as well simulate one on the spot. She sent the wavelength characteristic of kryptonite to Kyle Rayner, the #1 cheat in the Seven Lantern Corps. His talent could be said to be unprecedented. After thinking for a while and trying twice, a green longsword appeared. The wavelength characteristic on it was kryptonite. When the longsword was swung down, the expected scene of the enemy falling to the ground did not happen. Instead, Ark looked a little ferocious, as if he had recalled an experience. He jumped up high and punched the long sword that appeared from the kryptonite. The punch that could move mountains and fill the sea hit the ridge of the sword, and the sword was smashed into pieces. Damn it, Thea cursed silently. She could see a lot from this blow. This guy had almost no shortcomings. Superman could only rely on his willpower to resist kryptonite. Fiora and Kara could barely run, but this guy was almost immune to it. Although she could see some effects from the details, the effect was not big. Was it because of the previous two fights that he was prepared? Thea felt that his skin color was very abnormal. It was blue, which was not the color of a Kryptonian skin. It seems that there are kryptonite particles in his body. After being hit for the umpteenth time, Superman activated his supervision to observe and came to this conclusion. Thea nodded. No wonder Ark beat up Superman like he was beating a dog. She did not know how he did it by chance. Although the content was not high, he was now like a living kryptonite source. Troublesome guy. Thea began to emit wisps of black gas. She waved her hand and a shadow flame burned. The black flame burned fiercely and quickly burned the air. It was like a fire dragon soaring in the sky. With a swish, Ark disappeared. This move was the teleportation that he had used many times. Thea wanted to teach him a lesson for using teleportation in front of a mage-type god. She clenched her right fist and hammered the surrounding space. An invisible wave hit Ark, who was in the gap of space. He did not look good and could only retreat again. What greeted him was the shadow flame. Ark shouted and opened his hands. Many thin lines that could not be seen with ordinary eyes emerged from his palms. The thin lines were like a giant net that tied up the black flame. Then they began to transform, rearrange, and establish a new structure. He had used Thea's magic to add an energy shield to himself. This guy's ability was strange, a bit like a firestorm. Thea was not careless. She flicked her fingers, and the flames danced a deadly dance. A part of the silk rushed out of the encirclement and then rolled back to Arkansas. On the other side, Diana, holding a thunder spear, began to cooperate with Thea's attack. Superman and Kyle Rayner used long-range means to help. It was only a matter of time before Ark was defeated. Is this all you've got? Laugh. Why aren't you laughing? Thea grabbed Sure-Air's arm. The realm of death had a great influence on her. The longer the battle went on, the greater the hostility in her heart. She wanted to tear his arm off, but she did not expect his body to be extraordinarily sturdy. She tried to pull it off but failed. She could only kick his waist. The tremendous force caused Shar to fly more than 700 meters away from the ground. He crashed into a small mountain before he could barely stop himself. Diana threw out the lasso of truth. She did not expect Ark's reaction to be so fast. He rolled out of the lasso's range ungracefully. This guy seems to be stalling for time? As a newcomer, Kyle Rayner was not very sure. Thea was stunned. She remembered that this guy came to Earth alone. Wait a minute. It was indeed very suspicious. This kind of strength was not bad in general. It was no problem for him to dominate the universe, but it was definitely not enough to stop her. She had not seen any powerful means until now. Thea lost the advantage of being able to predict things, and it was the third time they were facing each other. She was very confused. She did not know where her opponent's trump card was. You guys go back to Earth first. I'll deal with him. Originally, teleportation was the fastest, but this guy was also proficient in teleportation. Everything in the world was difficult to build and easy to destroy. She did not know if her opponent had any anti-teleportation means. For safety's sake, she let Diana and the others fly back. At the same time, she used her strongest spiritual power to remotely connect to Batman. Bruce, turn off the electronic communication device. Listen to me. If this guy is not lying, this is his third time coming to Earth. That was his past, our present. I don't know what he's relying on. He knows me very well. He knows Superman, Diana, and the others. I don't know if my next move is part of his plan, but I know that you are a variable. Judging from the timeline, he transmigrated first and you returned later. Keep an eye on Earth and do things according to your judgment. Superman and the others are flying back. Thea did not dare to guarantee that these 3 messages would be sent as quickly as possible, but she believed in Batman's ability to disrupt the situation. The so-called third time was more like carrying memories or jumping back to a certain point. This point was the hole that the antimatter cannon had pierced. As for restarting the timeline, it was completely impossible. Even Big Brother Fate, the Stranger of Ghosts, Darkseid's father Zeus, and so many strong people were in the timeline. It was not something that could be restarted by a cat or a dog. Thea even had a hunch that there was a subtle balance between his transmigration and Batman's return. The key to victory or defeat was likely to be Batman. Thea looked up and saw that Superman, Diana, and the others had already flown far away. She smiled, and a fierce light flashed in her eyes. Her breath became sharper and sharper, and the nails on her hands grew a lot longer. Now let's see who can save you. Without waiting for him to answer, she flew over like a black lightning bolt. Her figure was very blurry. That was a visual error caused by high-speed movement. Chapter 869. In the face of Thea's all-out attack, Shar chose the most conservative defense. Unfortunately, there was still a big gap in strength. The landscape of this uninhabited planet was destroyed. Thea did not hold back at all. A large amount of death aura was everywhere, and the entire battlefield was like a ghost town. With a bang, Shar fell heavily to the ground. Heavily injured, he struggled a few times but could not stand up. Thea stepped on his neck. You're so difficult to deal with. You wasted 20 minutes of my time. Tell me, what's your plan? If you tell me well, I'll spare your life. Shar's mouth was full of blood. He coughed hard twice. I don't need your pity. Rebuilding Krypton has been my long-cherished wish. Now that this wish is about to come true, I have no regrets. After saying that, he closed his eyes and looked like he was waiting for death. You said you're facing me for the third time? I don't see how much of a threat you are. So that means you were killed by me the first 2 times? Actually, you don't know what's going to happen next, right? Because you were killed by me, you went back to that loophole. Thea analyzed. I didn't stop the first 2 times and killed you. Actually, that was a relief. You have some special ability that allows you to go back to that time point after death. When you come here for the 4th time, you'll be more familiar with my moves, right? That's why you want to die, isn't it? She smiled and restrained her murderous aura. The more the enemy wants to do something, the more we can't let him do it. Seeing that she couldn't get anything out of him, she summoned a huge stone pillar and tied Shar up tightly with 8 iron chains. He couldn't escape in a short time, so she turned around and returned to Earth. From the time they left the watchtower until now, only an hour had passed. However, Thea did not see the few figures she expected. Not to mention Diana, Superman, and even Batman were nowhere to be found. Thea, you're finally back. She pushed open the door of the surveillance room and saw Nightwing sitting in Batman's usual seat and greeting her. Finally? Why do you use this word? Where's Bruce? Finally, my ass. Nightwing didn't know how to explain. He scratched his head. I don't know much about magic, but it's been a week since Superman and the others returned. I'm sure of that. Thea's first thought was that he was spouting nonsense. Nightwing was talking in his sleep. They hadn't even fought for more than 20 minutes. How could it have been a week? However, after carefully sensing Nightwing, he confirmed that it was indeed Nightwing. However, when she looked at Earth from the corner of her eye, she noticed an anomaly. The flow of time on Earth was wrong. It wasn't magic, but it felt a bit like willpower. The effect was very powerful. The time on the entire Earth was sped up by more than 100 times. In fact, the watchtower was also affected. It was just that she had forced her way in and broke through the enchantment here. She really didn't know what to call it. Where are the others? I can't stay here for long. The enemy should have sensed me. Nightwing felt as if his brain had suddenly gone blank. Then a lot of things were forced into his mind. This was the discomfort caused by the different flow of time. He forced himself to endure. The new world. The remaining heroes are in the new world. Hearing the word remaining, Thea's heart was hazy. She was closely connected to the new world, so she was directly transported there. The expected scene of wounded people all over the ground and countless urns of ashes didn't appear. Along the way, many people had strange expressions. There was anticipation and a little fear. This made Thea very surprised. She found Batman in the magic school. This guy always wore that outfit regardless of day or night. When she pushed the door open, there was an argument inside. Several magic experts from Earth were present. Thea only nodded slightly to Old Ma. She hurriedly asked Batman, "Where's Diana? My mother? What's the situation on Earth now?" Batman still had a poker face. "The president is still in the White House. There's no danger at the moment. As for Earth, I can only say that the situation is complicated. As for Diana, we don't know where she is either." Thea only felt a sense of absurdity in her heart. They didn't know whether Diana was alive or dead, and her mother was still on Earth. But this group of people was arguing pointlessly. She felt very uncomfortable. Her slender hands clenched tightly. Her eyes became colder and colder. An invisible murderous aura began to spread. "Thea." Malcolm hurriedly called out to her when he saw that she was not in a good state. The young lady also knew that she was on the eve of a breakthrough. At this moment, it was very easy to be affected by death. She focused her mind and took 2 deep breaths to suppress her restlessness. Who is the enemy? There has to be an enemy, right? It's a god who came from the sky. Who? His believers call him Rao. Thea was puzzled. She almost thought that she had misheard. Batman repeated it again. She still couldn't believe it. Can't be. Rao is just an ordinary person. She couldn't tell Batman that she had seen Rao in Haruba's memory. In the eyes of the Kryptonians, Rao was the sage of their race. He was similar to the sages on Earth, but he was definitely not a god. Did you hear it wrong? This guy has been dead for 250,000 years. Thea felt that the information from Batman didn't match what she knew at all. I don't know if that guy is a god or not, but Superman listens to him, and a female Kryptonian is also helping him. Constantine seemed to be talking to himself. The remaining few people spoke one after another, piecing together the whole story. According to their accounts and Batman's calculations, when they were fighting against Hire, a huge alien spaceship came to Earth. A holy god descended from the sky, followed by countless believers. At that time, Superman returned to Earth. No one knew what Rao said to him, but Superman quickly called on everyone to believe in this god, and said that Rao would bring eternal peace and tranquility to Earth. Later, Supergirl Kara joined in. Only Fiora coughed up blood and escaped to the new world. She had yet to wake up. Benefiting from the high reputation of Superman and Supergirl, many ordinary people came out of their homes to accept Rao's gifts under the premise that they vouched for them with their reputations. At first, there were only a few people, but this number increased by thousands in less than half an hour. The patients didn't need medical cabins or medicine. They could be healed after receiving the blessings of Rao's believers. Many habitual criminals would turn over a new leaf and become virtuous people after receiving the blessings. The African warlords had no choice but to put down their weapons and give everyone the right to live. Rao even personally took action. Many of the harsh natural environments became green mountains and clear waters. Resources were redistributed, and no one starved anymore. Disease, war, sin, poverty, and the problems that plagued mankind for thousands of years seemed to have been eliminated. This was just the beginning. Chapter 870. Raoul descended on earth like the sun. He was warm and made everyone feel the light. However, he did not allow the existence of other gods. On the third day of his arrival on earth, he started a war between the gods. A war between the gods? Thea sneered. This was a term that was no longer used in modern society. She and Darkseid did not boast about the war between the gods. How dare an alien who came out of nowhere say something like that? What happened in the end? In the end, countless zealots came out of the spaceship. They attacked Atlantis without caring about the sacrifices. The Sea King walked out of another room dejectedly. Mira, who was beside him, looked even worse. At the same time, Mira brought Thea a piece of bad news. Poseidon died in the battle. It was Rao who personally took action. That day, the sea was raging with huge waves. All the Atlanteans witnessed the battle. The battle lasted for an entire day. In the end, unlike the Sea King who grew up on land, Mira had a certain level of faith in Poseidon. Now that her faith had been defeated, she did not know how to react. Poseidon died. Thea did not point out that Mira's word, died, was not accurate. It was difficult for gods to die completely. Even if they were chopped into 7 or 8 pieces, leaving only their heart and head, they could regain consciousness after a few decades of worship. However, it would take a long time before they could return to the world. At first, Thea thought that Raoul was a liar. However, the fact that he was able to kill Poseidon moved her. Poseidon's strength was not to be underestimated. Even if the god of death had absorbed much of his origin, he still had the strength of a first-tier god with the help of the sea. She thought that if she were to fight him, it would take her a few hours to win. However, it would be much more difficult to kill him. If a veteran god wanted to escape, he would have many tricks up his sleeve. Moreover, it was in the sea. Thea could not figure out why Poseidon did not retreat. She asked a few questions. Mira was too far away to see what Raoul had done. Seeing that there were too few clues, she did not care much about Poseidon. What about Diana? Did she join the War of Atlantis? I'm not sure. She was thrown into a strange tunnel by Raoul, and we didn't see her after that. She wasn't there, and you weren't there either. Superman helped Raoul like a madman, and that's our current situation. Batman even showed her the scene at that time. Diana wasn't the only one who was sucked into a spiral tunnel. The Flashberry and Ayers West were also sucked in. Thea frowned as she watched. Ayers was really a fierce fighter. How did a normal person like her get involved? However, Diana was not in danger, which made her feel much more relaxed. This tunnel looked strange, but it was undoubtedly a time tunnel. Search. After instructing his lackeys on the timeline to search, the 2 speedsters of the rapid ballistic path spread out a large net. With the help of the Master of Time, it wasn't difficult to find them. After all, they weren't Batman who was randomly teleported. Thea heaved a sigh of relief. This combination of Jars and Galeo had caught her off guard. Jars had been reborn 3 times, then what about Galeo? Was he new here, or had he transmigrated 3 or 2 times? No one knew. All right, I've got the gist of it. So what's the problem now? She was a little impatient. She wanted to quickly solve this mess. Whether it was a battle or an argument, it didn't matter. The problem now is that we haven't figured out where the problem is. Constantine sat at the side with a cigarette in his mouth and a smile that wasn't a smile. Galeo can indeed bring peace to Earth. That's what the divination said. Madame Xanadu, who always pretended to be transparent, said something rare. It also eliminates all kinds of injustices, Zatanna said with the same conflicted tone. But that's at the expense of the freedom of ordinary people. They've all been brainwashed, Constantine immediately retorted. They haven't. Our magic has checked. They don't show any signs of being controlled. The 2 exchanged a few words and started arguing again. Batman gave Thea a look. You see, we haven't even made up our minds internally. The young lady listened patiently for a while. In general, there were 2 opinions within Hero. One was that they were happy to see it happen. If there was no brainwashing or coercion, then they should welcome Galileo. After all, Superman trusted him, and they trusted Superman. Like Zatanna, Atom Man, and Batwoman, many people held this view. If they couldn't bring peace to Earth and someone else could, then they didn't have to stop it. They even had to support it. This view was the mainstream. It had to be said that Superman's huge reputation played a role. Even the Sea King, who was kicked out of his home, didn't think that Galileo had done anything wrong. Apart from some casualties when he broke through the gate, he didn't hurt the Atlanteans. He only killed Poseidon. The Atlanteans warmly welcomed this god and invited him into the palace as though they were welcoming a king's army. This made the Sea King question the legitimacy of his rule over Atlantis. Was he too unpopular? Naturally, there were people with different views. One of them was the conspiracy theorist Batman. He believed that there was a price to pay for power. There was no such thing as a free lunch in this world. Lex Luthor had the same view as him. According to Baldy Luthor, there was a conspiracy, a big conspiracy. Baldy Luthor was very unhappy when he heard that the god of Krypton had come to Earth. He was now working overtime to analyze Galileo's followers. He dissected, sliced, and used all kinds of underhanded methods. He felt that there was a problem. Could everyone on Earth be benevolent, righteous, and wise? He wouldn't believe it even if he was beaten to death. There must be some unknown secret. The last person who had an opposing view had to be emphasized. The Joker. This guy had escaped when Batman went missing. After that, Nightwing inherited the mantle, causing the Joker to be depressed for a period of time. It wasn't until Batman returned that he went out to commit crimes again. Galileo's arrival also stopped the chaos in Gotham. The Joker couldn't tolerate a Gotham full of saints. He was now leading his subordinates to fight a guerrilla war with Galileo's followers on Earth. Determined to fight and never compromise, the Joker could be said to be the guy with the strongest resistance. Batman, the Joker, and Luthor were the three outstanding people on Earth. They were the vanguard of the anti-Lorian movement. The remaining people didn't have a firm attitude. For example, Constantine was arguing with Zatanna and didn't oppose it as much as he said. Thea took a deep breath. This Galileo was really good. He didn't need to scheme. He only relied on practical actions and small favors to conquer Earth. What do you think? Batman was waiting for her opinion, or rather, her choice. Chapter 871. Ha, he's just a fake god. Is there such a thing as unearned happiness in this world? Money and health are all automatically delivered to your door? This goes against the basic laws of the universe. There must be a big problem here. Just sit and wait. Everything will get better? Then what's the point of having her as the goddess of trade? Rao is definitely an enemy. However, Thea didn't understand why the ghost stranger and the rest didn't do anything. Instead, they just watched everything happen. Next, she went to see Fiora. The female adjutant had some genetic damage and was now self-healing. Conventional treatment couldn't be used. She then contacted a few of her subordinates on Earth. After knowing that Death Knell and Poison Ivy were by her mother's side, she was completely relieved. I'll go and see what this Rao is capable of. Thea left behind a sentence and teleported to Earth. She concealed her tracks and landed on Earth. She sensed the flow of time here and squeezed in sideways. She didn't break the enchantment that enveloped the entire world. The flow of time inside and outside was different. Once it was broken, many ordinary people with poor health might not be able to withstand it. She had to observe carefully. Warmth, sunshine, walking on the road. The city was no longer as noisy as before. Everyone was still living a normal life, but their faces were filled with smiles of happiness. There were no thieves or robberies. Everyone was law-abiding. They greeted each other kindly when they met and gave each other their blessings when they left. This place was as good as heaven. Thea saw two Caucasian policemen kindly giving directions to a black guy. The gangs that wreaked havoc on the streets were diligently helping ordinary people to mow lawns and deliver milk. Everything was so beautiful and encouraging. There were no signs of being brainwashed. Everyone was sane. They were just doing things spontaneously and helping others. Thea also saw a follower of Rao that Batman mentioned. He was wearing a long robe and holding a long cane. He stopped a biker gang. With just a few words, the biker gang took off his nose ring and earring and cried like a child. He loudly said that he wanted to turn over a new leaf. There was also a large group of people cheering for him. Praise Rao! Praise Rao! Cheers could be heard from time to time. Everyone thanked Rao from the bottom of their hearts. No one realized that their outburst of emotions was a little abrupt. It was as if praising this god was a matter of course, as smooth as breathing and drinking water. This place was even more heavenly than heaven. It was King fake. Thea glanced sideways from time to time. How could an earthling do something like this? It was so fake that it was disgusting. It was not difficult to find Rail. He did not hide at all. Instead, he stayed in the metropolis and waited for her arrival. Silver white soft armor, red cloak, tall and straight figure. When Thea saw him, this fellow opened his arms and floated in the air like a martyr, his body flashing with countless golden lights. Rao's face was still young, with a square face and big ears. He looked very dignified, but his silver white hair added a unique wisdom to him. Coupled with his eyes that seemed to be able to see through the world, an indescribable holiness arose spontaneously, as if he was born to be a ruler. He had to admit that it looked really good. It would be even better if the building under his feet wasn't the Quinn building. Thea was speechless. This guy must have seen her before. He was floating at the top of Quinn's building. He definitely didn't pick her randomly. You are Rao? You don't look like much. Thea floated in the air and looked at him at the same level. At the same time, she carefully observed the fluctuations of his divine power. She thought that he was a powerful Kryptonian just like Shar. It was not incredible for a powerful alien to kill a god. Bao Lang had done it before, but she didn't expect that this guy was really a god, and a god of faith that had long been thrown into the dustbin of history. This was a very rare thing. It was easy for a god of faith to become a god, but they also died quickly. 95% of the gods who died today were gods of faith. They were weak, had no endurance, and lacked combat power. They listened to the complaints of their believers every day. Most of them were mentally ill or had a great change in temperament. If they had lost their sense of self, how could they talk about becoming a god? In short, this path was very narrow. Like Apollo, Ares, and the others were gods of faith. Apollo had the support of the sun and could hold on for a long time, but Ares, Thea felt that after Rao eliminated the global war, Ares would die directly. Logically speaking, Rao also walked the path of a god of faith. Him coming to Thea to provoke her was almost the same as sending himself to death. But this guy was very strong, and his strong faith had pushed his divine power to a very high point. In Thea's view, this guy was almost the same as God's father. Rao also glanced at her. He was indifferent and didn't speak. He didn't speak, but many ordinary people below began to clamor. Come down. Don't blaspheme the true God. Get out of the United States, woman of the Quinn family. Oh my God. What is she doing? Rao, please don't be angry. Thea turned a deaf ear. Her attention was on Rao. Good job brainwashing, but this is your way. What's the use of a group of ordinary people to smear me? I don't care at all. She wasn't a traditional superhero. If everyone objected, would she be so upset that she couldn't eat? If there were people who weren't afraid of death and wanted to test the speed of Death Knell's knife, she didn't mind sending people to kill 10 or 20 of them as a deterrent. She had been in the soul business for more than half a year. Ordinary people were scolding her, and they wanted her to take it lying down? Sorry, she didn't have that kind of self-restraint. Moira and Malcolm's blood was naturally not holy. Thea. Sister Thea. Superman and Supergirl flew to Rao's side from afar. The two of them tried to stop their war. Rao really wants to help the people of Earth. He has no selfish motives. Please believe me, Superman said very sincerely. On the other side, Kara also advised her not to fight with Rao. Both sides should work together to build New Earth. New Earth? Are you sure it will still be Earth after the construction and not Krypton? Superman, have you forgotten about Shar? Have you forgotten about Zod? They are in cahoots. Do you still remember? According to Shar, we have stopped them twice. This is the third time. Don't you think there's something wrong with this? How can you believe him so easily? The two of them blocked the path. Thea watched for a long time, but she didn't find any abnormalities with Superman and Supergirl. There was no mind control, no magic, no psionic power, not even any black technology. With her knowledge, she couldn't see any problems. She also didn't see any race or individual in the universe that had the ability to change one's will. Chapter 872. We are not being forced. Rao is a true god. He is selfless, Kara explained anxiously. On the other side, Superman was in a trance. All his memories were still there. He remembered what happened today, yesterday, and even many years ago. He remembered flying back to Earth and having a long talk with Rao. After that, he had done many good things for him. The joy that came from the bottom of his heart was still lingering in his mind. Thea looked at Superman's eyes, which changed from confusion to determination. For about 2 seconds, she judged that they must have been tricked. Among the 3 Kryptonians, Kara had the weakest willpower and could not resist Rao's bewitchment. Fiora was the strongest. After all, she had been wearing the yellow lamp for so many years. Fear had a high resistance to mind control. Superman was in between the two. Perhaps his subconscious had noticed something wrong, but it was suppressed by the surface consciousness. Follow me. There must be something wrong with your bodies. I need high-tech equipment to assist in the examination. Thea was ready to take the two of them away, but she also knew that it would not be so easy unless Rao pretended to be a fraud or a fool. Sure enough, Rao was still elegant, but his words were a bit harsh. Evil woman, don't try to bewitch my believers. Do you want to try the fire of justice in this world? Leave now. Rao first put a big label on her, then put himself on the moral high ground to reprimand her. The ordinary people below began to shout crazily as if they had taken an aphrodisiac. Go away, witch. You are not welcome here. We stand firmly together. We are not afraid of your magic. Ha ha. I'm dying of laughter. Thea was very annoyed by these people. She forced herself to control her temper. She knew that she must not fall into their trap. However, it was not her style to be scolded and not fight back. She had always been the one taking advantage of others. No one had ever taken advantage of her. Her cold gaze swept across the people below. Everyone felt that she was looking at them. Their hearts turned cold. Their voices instantly fell until there was no more noise. Magic. Do you really want to see what magic is? I hope you won't regret it. The surging mana became as black as ink under the influence of divine power. Countless black smoke gathered from all directions. The ordinary people all looked at the sky in horror. The originally sunny afternoon seemed to be covered by a thin layer of gauze. The veil grew thicker and thicker until it covered the entire sky. The clouds became thicker and thicker, as if they were condensing some kind of monster. Unlike the Black Death Emperor's peaceful death, her path was to peak at death from life and return to life from death. She was still very far away from this realm, but at this moment, there was already a trace of an embryonic form. The black clouds seemed to have a unique rhythm. As the clouds moved, it was as if they were breathing. There was even a faint singing voice in the wind. The more one listened to it, the colder they felt. Such a strange phenomenon made many ordinary people realize that something was wrong, and they all ran back home. Those who ran away were naturally looked down upon by the remaining members. They were said to have weak beliefs. They continued to shout at the sky, saying things like, "Kill me if you can. We're not afraid of you." Thea, don't. Superman's memory was not damaged. He thought that Thea was going to kill him, so he rushed over and tried to stop her. I'm just giving them something to do. She grabbed Superman with one hand and used her psychic power to check his body. She still did not find any abnormalities. With this delay, the effect of the magic was not maximized, but it was enough for ordinary people to suffer. The sun was blocked, and darkness began to fall. Black snowflakes slowly fell from the sky. Of course, there were impurities in the air, but more of it was the haze in her heart. She could use this opportunity to release all of it. Thea was not afraid that these negative emotions would affect ordinary people. because Raoul, who was so bright, would find a way to purify them. Raoul frowned, but he did not hesitate to fly to the highest altitude and began to disperse the black clouds. Unfortunately, he underestimated these negative emotions. Emotions that were connected to death were not so easy to purify. He was like a super big light bulb, shining for a long time, but only illuminating a block under his feet. Kara, come with me. Clark, you come too. Trust me, we've known each other for so many years. I won't harm you. Although Supergirl was unwilling, she still followed her old habits and prepared to be checked. Superman hesitated for a moment but also agreed to this plan. No, do you still remember those people you helped? Do you still remember those happy faces? Aren't we a family? Help me, help me. Isn't this your wish all along? Children, don't leave me. Rao was like a loving father who had been abandoned by his children. His eyes were filled with emotion as he looked at Superman and Supergirl. At this time, Thea felt that Raoul was simply disgusting. This guy was sincere, and she could see that his words were from the bottom of his heart. The more he acted like this, the more disgusted she felt. He was too immersed in the act. Did he really think that he was the god of light? Think of Louise, think of Lena. They're all waiting for you far away. At least check. If there's no problem, you can come back. Thea really wanted to take this Raoul to another planet and beat him up. Unfortunately, the nearby space seemed to be fixed, and teleportation was very slow. She did not want to fight in the metropolis, so she could only try to pull Superman and Supergirl away first. Don't think of bewitching my people. Raoul pulled out a lightsaber from the void and slashed at Thea. Thea's dark attribute was too strong, and it was not suitable for her to use a sacred sword in this state. Black Death King's scythe was also resisting her, so she had no choice but to take out a long sword from the inventory. The two swords clashed and quickly exchanged 7 or 8 moves. Thea originally thought that Raoul was about the same as the Heavenly Father, but in the end, she found that it was just SOSO. Raoul's divine power was very weak, like a castle on the sand. It looked solemn and dignified, but in fact, it would collapse with a push. Ha, you're so weak, and I treated you like I was facing a great enemy. Amidst the snowflakes, she swung her sword and forced Raoul to retreat. The two swords clashed. Raoul's light divine power could be destroyed by Thea with a wave of her hand, but her death divine power was extremely difficult for Raoul to deal with. The difference in strength between the two was obvious. Thea attacked while trying to get information out of him. You called them your people. Does that mean you admit that you're a Kryptonian? How did you live until now? According to the Green Lantern Corps' records, your lifespan is only 200 years. Did you use some secret technique or divine artifact to extend your lifespan? Thea blocked the lightsaber, and then quickly hit Raoul's shoulder with her palm. Huh? Even if she was not good at strength, she could still flatten a mountain. However, Raoul was not affected at all. He was not affected at all and even slashed her back. Chapter 873. Thea hurriedly parried the attack. The black snow around her provided her with a lot of cover. At the same time, Raoul's light attribute was greatly weakened. The cold darkness in the air disgusted him. It was more of a hindrance to his vision. Even if he used his mental power to perceive the surrounding snow, the divine power of death of the same origin greatly affected his judgment. Raoul was a trickster, and his swordsmanship was ordinary. After 3 moves, Thea saw another opportunity. She feigned to Raoul's side and stabbed him in the ribs. The long sword that she randomly chose was at most a semi-divine artifact. But with the blessing of the divine power of death, it was comparable to a top divine artifact. The angle, speed, and power of the sword had reached the perfect level of swordsmanship. However, something even stranger happened. Raoul's body was squeezed out of the sword. The death aura was purified in less than a second, and his body returned to normal. Not even a drop of blood flowed out. Holy *T. Thea felt that since she saw her until now, she had been surprised more than usual in the past month. What the hell? His recovery speed was too fast. When their weapons collided, Raoul dissolved the death aura that came into contact with him like a snail. But the death aura that invaded his body dissolved quickly. passive was faster than active? It didn't make sense. Thea was full of questions. Relying on her good swordsmanship, she stabbed Raoul twice. But Raoul took both attacks as if nothing had happened. Thea felt that it was time for her to retreat. Raoul's real strength was at the level of a wasteland wolf. He was not much stronger than Tur, but his skills were too strange. She was going to go back and discuss it with Batman. Take your believers and shovel the snow and ice. She increased the magic power supply of the black snow again. Even the street under Raoul's feet was covered. The black snow, accompanied by freezing rain and cold wind, began to wreak havoc in the city. The temperature in the city dropped rapidly. Many citizens who had been shouting slogans shrank their necks and hid indoors to keep warm. Don't you like to gather and shout slogans? It had been snowing heavily for 3 days. She wanted to see who had such a devout belief. A large number of snowflakes seemed to be alive in her palm. They gathered into a shadow cage and trapped Raoul. She turned around and ran with the 2 Kryptonians. Sister Thea, Raoul is really not a bad person. You've misunderstood him, Kara explained along the way. The eldest young miss responded with a series of ands and ahs while pondering over the other party's strangeness. Thea felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity. Unafraid of death energy attacks, counterattacking as if nothing had happened, and not getting injured no matter how she attacked. Death Chi? Black Death Emperor? White Lantern? Suddenly, she thought of the problem. This state was very similar to when she wore the White Lantern to share the damage, and the other party's power of faith was also unimaginably huge. Faith, gathering all living beings to share the damage. The white lamp, a clue that connected all the conditions, naturally could deduce the answer. This Raoul must have seen his white lamp in a timeline that he didn't know about, and then used some method to simulate a small part of its functions. Everyone who received his blessings had their life force connected with him. That was why he could attack Thea as if nothing had happened. It was also through this method that he absorbed the faith of the Atlanteans and killed Poseidon, who was of similar strength. Thea felt that her guess was not far from the truth. Poseidon had to admit that his death was a little unjust. Unlike the white lamp's automatic connection to the universe's life force, Raoul's was more manual. He personally went to the battlefield to develop believers, and then expanded the audience. There was a lot of investment in the early stage, and the speed of development was slow. However, once the scale was established, it was not much worse than the white lamp. Kara? Oh my God, are you okay? After returning to the new world and finding Batman, Lena ran out and gave Kara a big hug. Kara was a little hesitant, but she still responded with a blushing face when Lena asked for a kiss. Luthor, who walked out of the room, and Superman, who came in through the door, looked at each other strangely, but neither of them said a word. To break the silence, Thea quickly dragged Batman out. Superman trusted Batman a lot. Even though Luthor was also a little subdued here, he still did not overreact. This is the result of my 2 days of research. Look at this, ladies and gentlemen. Luthor clicked on the screen. There was a scan of a human brain on both sides. The one on the left is normal, and the one on the right is Raoul's believer. There seems to be no problem, but after my research, here, and here have all undergone subversive changes. Luthor did not specifically explain his research methods. Instead, he zoomed in on the images and pointed out 3 subtle differences for them to see. Except for Kara, who was a poor student and did not understand anything, everyone knew very well that the brain dominated human behavior patterns. Could it be an individual phenomenon? This brain area has been expanded in a small area, and it is not a strong argument. Thea, who was a leading figure in modern medicine, quickly raised her doubts. Luthor was not angry. He had an unusual admiration for science. This is the unified answer I came up with after randomly searching for 70 believers. How dare you attack ordinary people? Superman angrily grabbed Luthor's collar. It was your Kryptonian god who attacked the Earthlings first. Luthor's voice was louder than Superman's, and he stared back at Superman fiercely. Looking at the anger in Luthor's eyes, Thea even suspected that this guy's eyes could emit omega rays. She hurriedly pulled the two apart. Their cousin and their lover's brother were about to attack each other. The two girls looked at each other, and they were a little at a loss. Fortunately, Batman had the special ability to not let people stray from the topic. He brought the topic back. What's the matter with the Kryptonians' abnormality? I didn't receive any so-called blessings. There was no physical contact. Our cell density is dozens of times higher than that of the Earthlings, so this can't happen to us. Even though Superman hated Luthor, he did not think that Luthor was lying. Raoul had indeed done something to ordinary people. Genes. Your genes contain the message of loyalty to Raoul. Normally, if you see Raoul, you will automatically believe him. This message is deeply engraved in your genes. As an expert on Kryptonians, Luthor gave the answer without thinking. However, the answer made Superman and Supergirl a little confused. Was he really wrong? Superman had realized that something was wrong with him before, and he was mentally prepared. Now he just gritted his teeth and pondered. On the other hand, Supergirl Kara was very sad. This was worse than being controlled. They had consciousness and memory. They were willing to introduce Raoul to the Earthlings. It was all over. The good reputation that they had painstakingly accumulated was ruined. Ordinary people would never trust them in the future. Chapter 874. Kara, who had been helping others and was proud of it, suddenly felt dizzy. She was so annoyed that she wanted to bang her head against the wall when she thought about how she would be scolded in the future. However, she still worshipped Rao. She was both regretful and happy at the same time. She felt that she had become two different people. Thea saw that something was wrong with her and quickly knocked Kara out. Kara's kindness is being used. Take her to rest. We will take care of things here. Thea handed Kara to Lena. It was good to have someone to accompany her at this time. It was not difficult to guess what Supergirl was thinking. She was annoyed and depressed. She had worked hard for 30 years, and now she was back to square one. There was no praise or support, and now she had to bear the blame. This was a test for the little girl. However, Thea believed that Kara would be able to get out of this predicament. Kryptonians had a tough heart. Superman, who was beside her, was very calm. This guy had gone through too many ups and downs. He was worshipped by thousands of people, then misunderstood and controlled. He got back on his feet and earned his reputation again. He was misunderstood and controlled again. He had lost count of how many times this had happened. Although they had found the problem, it was still troublesome to solve it. The Kryptonian genes were very strong, which was a good thing in normal times. However, it was not so good now. Even if Thea had all the records of the Kryptonian genes with Luthor's research, they would still have a way to modify the Kryptonian genes. Who knew what would happen if they removed part of the genetic information? As long as we don't face Rao, we will be fine. We can put it aside temporarily. What about the ordinary people? Superman asked worriedly. As long as we kill Rao, we can free everyone. He is the source of everyone's information. Before Luthor could finish, Thea interrupted him. No, it's impossible. He is now connected to everyone's life. Let's not talk about whether we can kill him. Once Rao dies, everyone who is connected to him will die too. Is there a distance limit? What if the battlefield is on another planet? Will the connection be cancelled if the main body loses consciousness? Will the kryptonite work? What about the red sun radiation? Will it work if we make the ordinary people unconscious? Batman asked a lot of questions. Thea had thought about some of them, but she had not. Not only her, but Luthor, Superman, and Batman, who had raised the question, were also deep in thought. Even if there is a distance limit, he is a god, and the area he connects to is very large. Raoul is the center, and his spaceship is the node. He is not only connecting to the people of Earth, but there are also many intelligent life forms on the spaceship, and there is definitely more than one spaceship like this. Thea frowned slightly. She did not tell the truth. Instead, she was very conservative and vague. On the way back, she had already sent the Yellow Lantern Green Lantern Bug tribe to scout the entire universe. The result was horrifying. There were at least 3,000 Kryptonian spaceships similar to the one Raoul had landed on Earth. These spaceships were distributed in sectors 2813, 2814, and 3125. Earth was not Raoul's first stop. From the numbers gathered by his subordinates, It could be seen that he had already controlled at least 100 planets. Some planets were 10 times or even 100 times larger than Earth, and there were tens of billions of intelligent life forms on them. There was no way to calculate the exact number of people under their control, but Kerrigan had reported to her that there were 1 trillion intelligent beings. No matter how fierce the attack was, when it was divided among 1 trillion people, there was not much left. The Black Death Emperor had a lot to say about this. They discussed for a long time, but there was no result. Thea was summoned away by her mother. The White House was even more lively. She did not even have a sip of water before she was dragged into a meeting. Several leaders of the United Nations were on the line at this time, and everyone had a sad look on their faces. Thea heard a few words and understood why they were so sad. Raoul wanted to abolish the borders between countries and eliminate artificial barriers, regardless of skin color or nationality, and establish a global village. The general idea was something like one world, one dream, and so on. In terms of humanities, theory, social development, and resource allocation, this was definitely a good thing. However, from a political point of view, it was absolutely terrible. A group of old politicians tore off their disguises, and at this time all of them were cursing with righteous indignation. Of course, they would not say that they were reluctant to give up their power. They talked about values, democracy and freedom, social justice and legal construction, and a lot of other things. In short, Raoul was definitely done for. They were not greedy for power, but from a fair point of view, they were boycotting him. Moira saw her come in and left the vice president to accompany a group of people. She wanted to discuss the next step with her daughter. If they really could not deal with it, then they could only run away. How is it? There were too many people around, so she asked very implicitly. Very bad, but it is not to the point of no return. Thea thought about it and still sent a message to her mother. The enemy was very difficult to deal with, but it was not to the point of giving up everything. Thea was now very helpless. Eliminating war, eliminating poverty, and uniting all intelligent life, everything Raoul did was very correct from the macroscopic point of view of the universe. On this point, the will of the world was on his side. This was also the main reason why the ghost stranger did not do anything and just watched all of this happen. Excluding some of the other party's provocative actions, to be fair, Raoul did everything from the bottom of his heart. He was indeed a kind god. Compared to him, Thea was as black as coal. The mother and daughter briefly exchanged information. Not bad. Raoul's methods were very gentle and did not escalate to the point of confrontation. However, a large number of soldiers ran away to worship Raoul, causing the power in the hands of the politicians to shrink rapidly. Maybe in 7 days, maybe in 10 days, their subordinates would all run to Raoul's camp. At that time, they would be worse than ordinary people. Thea described the situation as extremely difficult. Then, she thought about countermeasures while watching the politicians complain. It was ironic. After fighting for the people for so long, fighting against Zod, Doomsday, Darkseid, and the Black Death Emperor, the people who scolded her the most were the people. Some said that she was a witch, some said that she was a demon, and the ones who firmly supported her and said that she was a human hero were actually these politicians. At the same time, the other members of the anti-Raoul group were also making their own preparations. Batman created a kind of solvent that could make ordinary people unconscious and cut off Raoul's control over the people of Earth. There was also a kind of reagent that could make ordinary people return to normal. The Quinn Group, Wayne Group, and Luther Group, as well as the satellites of several major countries, were all mobilized. They were prepared to spray the solvent on Earth at the same time. On the other side, Luther was also adjusting his new armor. During the Night of Darkness, he was surprised to find that he was very talented in combat. At this critical moment, he was prepared to charge out at the critical moment as the savior of all mankind. If he could give Raoul a vicious blow, that would be even better. Chapter 875. The clown, who was in Gotham, used his actions to help the anti-Rao alliance. He planted bombs in the city square and broadcasted bloody scenes on TV. His best move was to disguise himself as a believer and infiltrate the enemy's inner circle. Then, he used his submachine gun and rocket launcher. A few extraterrestrial believers who did not look like they were from Earth were given special attention. Out of the 12 high priests of Rao, 5 of them were killed in a day. Other than one of them who was slightly normal, the other four had superpowers. However, they were useless in front of the clown. The believers were confused and could not predict the clown's movements. They set up 3 traps in a row, but the clown easily saw through them and counterattacked. They lost many elites, indescribable intelligence, unpredictable behavior, and the trait of not being blessed. This was the report that the high priests gave to Rao. After the clown's crazy destruction, Gotham City, which had taken a turn for the better, entered the world of terror again. After a few exchanges, even Raoul's most loyal follower started to feel fear toward this man with pale skin and green hair. However, the clown only felt that this was a game. When the city was in chaos, he would stop and enjoy the sweetness of it. However, when the high priests of Rao regrouped and restored order, the clown would jump out and play another game. After 3 days of tug-of-war, the high priests were almost driven crazy. They could only ask for help from their boss. However, Rao could not leave at that time. He was leading the believers to remove the snow. The black snow fell for 3 days. He used all his divine power and finally dispersed the black clouds. However, dispersing the black clouds did not mean the end. It only meant that they had entered the intermediate stage. Metropolis was too cold. The temperature was -20 degrees Celsius at noon. The ground was frozen with a thick layer of ice. It was difficult to walk on the road. Other than the most devout believers, the normal people chose to stay at home. Rao was a god. He could not use a shovel and hammer to sweep the road. He could only leave this job to his believers. It was tiring to do voluntary work in the cold, so it was inevitable that he would complain. Rao could only continue to shine and use his divine power to help the citizens remove the snow. With this delay, he could no longer care about the clown in Gotham. Raoul, who was known for his omnipotence, did not disappoint his believers in the end. He desperately squandered his divine power, and after 5 days, he finally restored the metropolis to normal. A few things happened in the past 5 days. Diana and Barry were found by the Golden Vanguard. They wandered to the 30th century. Diana participated in the establishment of the Superhero Legion, while Barry and heirs worked hard to create humans. In the end, they gave birth to a new life. After testing, it was a pair of twins. Time travel had too much of an impact on pregnant women. He could only leave Iris in the 30th century and wait until she gave birth to the child. Diana's return gave Thea an idea. Time travel? Are you planning to go to the past and destroy Rao? Will the Olympic Games in this world disappear? It was still Batman who raised the question. Thea even thought maliciously, why didn't he become a contestant? This old man had too many questions. She thought for a moment. I don't know if it will affect the result. After all, the law of causality still has to be followed. But Raoul's situation is very special. She did not know how fate planned Raoul's trajectory. She was very vague. In fact, Thea mainly wanted to see how Raoul gathered the vitality of all living beings on himself. Gods could be eternal, but those machines and magic devices definitely could not. In the Guardian's memory, Raoul was the founder of the Kryptonian civilization, but he only lived for 200 years. Now, not only did he live to this day, but he also became a god, absorbing the vitality of his believers to replenish himself. This was the only way Thea could think of. She could go to Raoul's earliest era and destroy this device. After that, she could easily kill him. Are you planning to go to Krypton? Batman quickly figured out her idea and lowered his head to think. Krypton? On the other side, Kara, who was a little listless, suddenly became energetic. Can I go? Anyway, I can't help here. Looking at Kara's lifeless face, Milady did not know how to persuade her. She thought for a moment. I'm planning to go to Krypton in ancient times. It's completely different from what you remember. Kara was very determined. Thea tried to persuade her twice. Seeing that she was determined, she could only agree. Seeing that Lena was about to go, she quickly added, Krypton's atmosphere is similar to Earth's, but the gravity there is 10 times that of Earth, so... What she meant was that ordinary people should not go and cause trouble. I'll go. I want to go. The two heroes, Batman and Luthor, spoke at the same time. They said that 10 times the gravity was nothing. They had black technology to deal with it. Others could go, but not Luthor. God knows if he would blow up Krypton in advance. In the end, Thea dragged Batman and Supergirl along. Although Superman could not help to deal with Raoul, his high reputation could attract all the superheroes and dissuade the ordinary people who had not yet received the blessing. Diana, on the other hand, was the main force to deal with this god, Raoul. After everything was arranged, the three of them took the Council's time spaceship to the past. The coordinates were 250,000 years in the past, Krypton in ancient times. There was very little vegetation on the surface of the planet. The red sun hung in the sky, and a creature that looked like a wild boar was looking for food. Suddenly, it realized that it had bumped into something. It looked at the empty ground with its small eyes, and with its low intelligence, it ran away. The spaceship deactivated its stealth mode. The hatch opened slowly. Kara was the first to run out. The red sun made her lose all her superpowers. She was used to the yellow sun. Under the red sun, it was a little dazzling. However, the smell of Krypton still intoxicated her. This was her hometown, even if it was a long time ago. Batman and Thea walked out slowly. The gravity is really strong. Batman had changed his clothes. At this time, he was adjusting the parameters of his clothes with the equipment on his wrist. From a distance, it looked similar to his usual outfit. In fact, it was a high-tech sky suit. Milady looked around indifferently. This place did not affect her much. It was just 10 times the gravity. The Kryptonians of this era did not have advanced weapons because of the existence of the red sun. They did not have strong bodies. They were a group of primitive people. Other than being careful of the god Raoul coming from the timeline, there was really nothing to be afraid of. After looking around, she pointed to the southwest. That is Kandor, where Raoul's original tribe was. It is the light of Krypton's civilization. Batman glanced at it casually and did not say anything. To him, Kandor was no different from Toronto. Supergirl was different. She whispered it twice. The few of them walked forward as usual. The gravity here was too strong. Earth's mechanical equipment could not run. Fortunately, the distance was not far. Batman, who was good at spying in the dark, went ahead to investigate. Chapter 876. Thea saw Kara's nostalgic look and asked casually, "Have you lived in Kandor?" I don't know if this Kandor is the same city as the one in my memory, but I have lived in Kandor for 4 years. Thea patted her on the shoulder to comfort her. She had to admit that the Kryptonians were good at preserving cultural relics. Kandor City was not a 1,000-year-old or 10,000-year-old ancient capital. It was a 250,000-year-old ancient capital. If she remembered correctly, Kandor City had been taken away by Brainiac in a glass dome before the Krypton explosion. It should still be sleeping in one of his collections. If she had the time, she could get it back. Not long after, they met up with Batman and met a Kryptonian hunting team. These guys were still stuck in the tribal era. The existence of the red sun made their bodies not much different from ordinary people on Earth. It was nonsense to tell a group of primitive people that they were time travelers from another planet. Thea knew a little about the history of Krypton, but this era was too old, and there were few written records. Rao was like a legend to the later generations of Kryptonians. It was a sign of erudition to know about Rao and Kandor at this time. Thea was good at making up lies. She described the three of them as tribal messengers from 2 mountains away, and this time, they were here to seek an audience with the chief of Rao. The ordinary Kryptonians were confused, but the leader was knowledgeable. He knew that there were several tribes on the other side of the mountains and the sea that were not inferior to them. After a few simple questions, he found that Thea's Kryptonian accent was strange. He thought that she was an outsider. Seeing that there was nothing wrong with her, he happily led the three of them to meet the chief. There were no rules in the primitive society, and the three of them soon met Rao. He was a handsome middle-aged man, but his hair was mottled instead of the silver white of the future. At this time, he was not a god. He was just a wise and tired old man. "Are you looking for me?" Rao raised his head and looked at the three of them. He was not an ordinary guard. Even though the current situation on Krypton limited his vision, a wise man would always be wise no matter where he was. He could tell that the three of them were unusual. Just by looking at their temperaments, they didn't seem like people who were hungry. Furthermore, the three of them were wearing completely different clothes. Supergirl was wearing her uniform cloak, Batman was also wearing black clothes, and Thea was dressed very casually. However, it was precisely because of this that she looked abnormal. "Who are you?" Rao raised his voice, and the surrounding guards hurriedly ran over with their spears, ready to protect the beloved tribal leader. Although Supergirl pretended to be powerful, she was actually just an ordinary person here. Batman looked at the approaching guards and was on high alert. Thea tried to sense it. The magical elements on Krypton were extremely scarce. No wonder it developed into a technological civilization. Although there weren't many of them, there were still some. She raised her hand and raised several earth walls, separating the four of them from the outside world. "Are you here to kill me?" There was no fear in Rao's expression. If killing him could solve the problem on Earth, Thea would definitely kill him without hesitation. However, she found that Rao's vitality was very unstable. It seemed like it could be extinguished with a breath, but in the next second, it would be replenished by several streams of vitality. This meant that his pseudo-white lamp experiment had already begun, but it was still very preliminary. "You are doing something dangerous. You are depriving ordinary people of their lives to replenish yourself." Thea pointed out the problem directly. "No, I am not forcing them. They are all willing. Look around. Only I can lead the tribe to prosperity. I did not take the initiative to hurt anyone." Listening to the guards shouting outside the wall, they tried their best to break through, but unfortunately, the earth walls were extremely sturdy with the support of magic. Rao realized that he was in a desperate situation, but he didn't have any fear of death. There was only unwillingness left in his words. There were many things he could do, but there was no time. He tried to persuade them with words in the end. "He doesn't look like a bad guy," Batman asked in a low voice. He had been hiding for a few days because he was afraid of being brainwashed. Now that he met Rao face to face, he immediately found the key to the problem. Thea smiled bitterly. Of course not. He did not lie. Everything he said was from the bottom of his heart. "I am afraid that only the few sages on Earth can be compared to such a noble person. Don't be afraid of bad people doing bad things, but be afraid of good people doing bad things. When good people did bad things, their destructive power was 100 times greater than bad people. Let's not hurt him. Let's destroy the device that connects his vitality and let him die of old age." Thea didn't want to kill such a good person with a high moral character. She immediately nodded and withdrew her magic. A group of guards hurriedly stood guard beside Rao, and the hunting captain who had led them here rushed forward without a care for anything else. "We don't mean any harm. Maybe we can talk." She flicked her finger and knocked away the attack. Rao realized that the guards were useless in front of Thea, so he waved his hand and signaled them to leave. He then led them into the room to talk. "Who taught you this method of sharing vitality?" She went straight to the point and asked the most important question. "In my dream, a person who was covered in white light taught me," Rao said with uncertainty. Thea looked at him suspiciously. Did he come to Krypton in his dream? Bullshit. However, Rao didn't look like he was lying. 9 out of 10 people on Earth were lies, but Kryptonians didn't have the concept of lying. The future Rao must have returned to this era and taught her younger self how to use the vitality collection device. It was not difficult to guess. But how did this guy do it? Thea was a little confused. It was impossible for the old Golden Vanguard to meet her younger self. Her father knew that his wife was killed by the Wasteland Wolf, but he didn't go back to the past to remind her younger self. Time was very uncertain. The more one wanted to change the result, the more likely it was to make things worse. "You have destroyed the tradition of freedom on Krypton. You are like a tyrant." Kara didn't say anything. She sensed Rao carefully and found that she had no intention of following him. It further confirmed the fact that Kryptonian genes had been tampered with. She was very distressed and finally couldn't help scolding him. Krypton. Rao was confused. Where are you talking about? Kara was shocked and hurriedly turned to look at Sia. She also covered her face and looked speechless. Why are you talking about Krypton with a caveman? Well, Krypton was named by your people 190,000 years in the future. It's okay. You don't have to be surprised. Look at my hand. Thea used a spell to erase Rao's memory of the past few seconds. Rao was a little confused. Thea looked back at Kara. Go on. After all, he is one of your people. Chapter 877. Oh, Supergirl said. She put on a serious face and was about to say something when she quickly retracted her words. She whispered, Candor. Is there such a name in this era? Thea was also stunned by the question. She thought carefully and said, Candor should be the name of the 31st dynasty. Supergirl looked surprised. Then what should this place be called now? Thea racked her brains and frowned. She thought for a long time, but there was nothing in the Kryptonian genetic information or the Guardian's memory. Suddenly, she realized something was wrong. How would I know? This is the history of Krypton. Kara retorted softly. But I was sent to Earth before I could learn this. So, what you mean is that I should ask the education department on Earth to set up a Kryptonian history class. You were the one who didn't study hard. Moreover, can you not add the name of the place? Without the name of the place, it won't be impressive. Rao looked at them arguing in a low voice and was a little puzzled. He only remembered that this little girl seemed to want to say something to him. Batman, on the other hand, was speechless. He liked to study the secrets of Kryptonians, but he was not interested in the history of Kryptonian. Both of you? We still have a mission. Thea was criticizing the Kryptonians for not paying attention to history, while Kara retorted that Kryptonians had specialized personnel to study history, but she obviously did not. Batman hurriedly interrupted their conversation. The two quickly stopped talking and finally decided to let Kara do the talking. Have you thought about what you want to build here in the future? Kara chose her words carefully, but she was too cautious. Her tone, which was supposed to be harsh, made it sound like an interview. Rao was stunned. Did this group of people come all the way here just to talk about life and ideals with him? But there was nothing he could not say. I hope that my people can get out of this predicament. The old don't have to choose a place to die. The young babies, whether strong or weak, can survive. I hope that we can walk out of this mountain. I hope that everyone can walk proudly under the sun. Rao spoke very sincerely. Even though he had done very extreme things 250,000 years later, he had not deviated from his original path. He was still helping others, even if this method seemed to be evil. I admit that your goal is noble, but your method is wrong. Why do you think only you can lead your people to prosperity? Can't others do the same? Death is equal in front of everyone. Why don't you enjoy the rare peace? To an ordinary person, Thea's words could be interpreted as why don't you die? But she felt that Raoul did not care about life and death. Her words sounded like a bystander advising someone to rest. Unsurprisingly, Rao was not angry. Instead, he was rather determined. This is my responsibility. The responsibility that all of my people have given me. As long as this goal is not achieved, I will not back down. They weren't afraid of death, and they weren't greedy for power. They were just doing it for the responsibility on their shoulders. If the civil servants on Earth had such perseverance, they would have unified the universe long ago. At the same time, Thea had a new understanding of the stubbornness of the Kryptonians. With such an ancestor, it was no wonder that the Kryptonians she had met before were so stubborn. From Zod, Fiora, Shar, Clark, Kara, and even the dog Krypton, Rao had imperceptibly influenced the Kryptonians to have an extraordinary temperament. Unswerving, never giving up, and willing to bear any burden for the sake of their ideals. She had to admit that the Kryptonians were an excellent race, and Rao's influence could not be ignored. You shouldn't put your personal will above everyone else. The spirit of free choice isn't that Krypton a tradition here? Kara was conflicted. On the one hand, she could see Rao's great ambition, but on the other hand, she felt that it was contrary to her values. How can that be? I have always followed this will. This is the cornerstone of our development. Rao retorted without any pretense. My children, I have never deprived you of your personal will. I just need your help. Is that wrong? Another Rao walked out of the air. He had long silver hair. It was the god Rao. He followed Thea and the others and asked Kara with a sad face. The two Raos stood side by side. Whether it was Batman or Kara, they were all on guard. Thea gently pulled them back. He has not fully entered this world. This is just a projection. When the two Raos stood together in time, there was no abnormality. This made Milady look at them for a while. The way the other party traveled through time was completely different from them. In her opinion, it was a bit like the wishing spell in magic. It gathered the faith of all beings and allowed the god to move freely in the timeline. In addition, the life force that God Rao consumed for the past 250,000 years was supplied by his believers. He was fundamentally different from the original ordinary person. The life force that originally belonged to him had been exhausted. This God Rao could be said to be the aggregate of all beings with his personal will. You are me? The ancient Rao looked at the familiar stranger beside him and was a little incredulous. For your ideals, you became a god. This is what you will look like in the future. Batman introduced him. The ancient Rao looked at the person beside him. Although the appearance was the same, the temperament was completely different. It was a little cold. There was no emotion in his eyes, and there was no respect for ordinary people. This is not him. You are not me. I am you. The two old men began to argue. Kara and Batman joined in, while Milady crossed her arms and watched the show outside. Kara quickly ran out of words and was eliminated. The main force of the debate became Batman and the ancient Rao to deal with God Rao. After 250,000 years, Rao's thoughts had unknowingly deviated to the gutter. Now that he was confronting his former self, the disharmony became more and more obvious. This also sounded the alarm for her. Rao was such a noble and self-disciplined Kryptonian, but in the end, he became unrecognizable. She was an earthling with complicated thoughts and low moral standards. It was really a headache for her to keep her original heart and stick to her original heart. You will hinder my grand goal. God Rao was a little speechless. He reached out to grab his past. Thea certainly would not let him have his way. All of you back off. His energy has come in. Facing Rao's hand, a wind blade was thrown out. The two of them quickly exchanged a few blows. Sia didn't dare to use too much strength. Lauka was in the timeline. If she used too much strength and made a hole in the timeline, she wouldn't be able to live anymore. Who would be able to stand big cousin, second cousin, and third cousin every day? Come on if you want to. Under her water, Rao squeezed out with some effort. Chapter 878. Thea raised her hand and cast an ice storm. Although this spell had been brewing for a long time, its power was greatly reduced in Krypton, a place where magic was almost non-existent. It was originally 100 meters tall and dozens of meters in diameter, but now it was a miniature tornado with a height of 30 meters and a diameter of 8 meters. Even so, this spell was comparable to a natural disaster in the eyes of the locals. The ancient Raoul yelled at them and asked them to stop. Thea did not seem to hear him. She slapped the ground with both hands, and a thick mud dragon drilled out from the ground. Then, several ice attacks and an ice storm smashed towards Raoul. This Raoul was several times weaker than when he was on Earth. Across the river of time, his ability to share life force was basically useless. Now, he was squandering the power of faith. From infinite HP to a normal level, Thea was ready to take him down in this time and space. She used a large amount of magic to attack while sealing the space. No matter what, she could not let him escape. Raoul did not retreat. His divine power was mixed with his 250,000 years of persistence. He felt that he was not wrong, and Thea had been obstructing him time and time again. She must be an evil enemy. Is there anything wrong with being righteous? Am I wrong to help ordinary people? Facing the righteous Raoul, Thea was a little speechless. It was as if she was a demon king. Please, I am the righteous one, okay? Fighting while shouting that justice will prevail, it was a little shameful. In all honesty, she also did not feel that she could represent justice. Why are you shouting when you are fighting? You are really annoying. Sia flew into a rage out of humiliation. She quickly took out a golden dragon skin and used the dragon skin as the drawing paper and the blood of the hell demons as the paint. She communicated with the divine power of art and quickly drew a picture on the dragon skin with just a few strokes. In the picture was a barren world with no civilization and no life. Get in here. Thea controlled the mud dragon and threw out 2 black chains of death aura. She wrapped Raoul and rushed into the world in the picture. Raoul's weak divine power was undoubtedly exposed. He did not notice anything unusual and still wanted to break free from the dragon. Haha! Seeing that everything was as expected, Thea couldn't help but laugh out loud. This was the insight she had gained from studying the stranger's silver coin and the shadow of the first. He was still far from being able to create a parallel universe. However, with the help of top-grade materials, it was sufficient to create a 2-dimensional small world. In the 2-dimensional world, the real Raoul had become a little man with lines, and she could add lightning and volcanoes to the drawing paper at will. She could draw a mountain with a wave of her hand, and a large river with a wave of her brush. The sense of accomplishment of having everything under control was simply overwhelming. Unaware of the situation, Raoul fought with all his might and knocked away the mud dragon. Before he could catch his breath, Thea drew 3 more opponents for him. There was a cactus that was taller than a mountain, a giant squid that drilled out of the river, and an eagle that flew from far away in the sky. During the battle, he would draw a few meteorites on Raoul's head from time to time, or create a hurricane. Looking at Raoul's puzzled face, she almost laughed out loud. This kind of 2-dimensional world couldn't trap a real god. However, Raoul was a different story. His strength was regressing every minute and every second. It was unknown whether he would be able to come out in the end. A real life. Thea took a few glances and discovered the mystery within. The eagle and squid she drew didn't have any life, but Raoul did. He could even be said to be an aggregate of life. As more and more of his divine power was poured into the 2-dimensional world, this thing that he casually created actually had a hint of color. She had never spent much effort on life. This wasn't to say that it wasn't important, but it was a matter of order. She had the white lamp, and life was her friend. Peeking at life from the side of death, she also had a high level of life. Now that Raoul had entered the 2-dimensional world, the things he injected into the world seemed real yet not real, like an illusion yet not an illusion. She originally wanted to kill Raoul, but now she changed her mind and prepared to observe more. At the same time, she added countless rare materials into the drawing to strengthen this world. Ouch! Just as she was admiring Raoul beating up the little monsters, she suddenly felt a violent backlash from her divine power. The sudden attack almost made her vomit blood. She forced herself to endure it and looked into the drawing. Raoul's body shattered into pieces like a piece of glass. What happened? There were no enemies around. She suddenly realized something. She immediately turned around and looked at Batman. She saw the ancient Raoul lying on the ground with a smile on his face. He was already dead. Damn! Thea felt that she almost sprained her waist. This guy was actually dead. You guys! She questioned Batman angrily. Sister Thea, he committed suicide. He didn't want to become like the future. We couldn't stop him. Kara explained with red eyes. He was a respectable person. He turned off the life absorption device. His life had actually come to an end. In order to help us, he gave up everything, Batman said emotionally. From their point of view, Thea was so agitated because a good person had died. They understood and were also upset that they didn't keep an eye on Raoul. In the end, this tragedy happened right under their noses. The 2 of them also tried to persuade her. Young Mistress wanted to cry but had no tears. However, if Raoul wanted to die, they really couldn't stop him. However, this guy lived when he should have died and died when he should have lived. Young Mistress suspected that the will of the world was against her. I have already trapped that Raoul. He really didn't need to. Sigh. She shook her head and sighed. This guy's life force was exhausted and he died. With her methods, she could save him with some effort. However, the one in the 2-dimensional world was definitely dead. That was a time error. No matter how powerful the resurrection spell was, it wouldn't affect him. Maybe this would work too? She glanced at the drawing. A large amount of life force had descended into this small world. Moreover, because Raoul was a time error, his death also brought time to the two-dimensional world. She had created such a thing by chance. She was also quite helpless. She put away the drawing and prepared to study it later. According to Raoul's instructions before his death, she destroyed the 12 white jade pillars used to absorb life force. After that, she pulled Batman and Kara and ran away. With a bunch of primitive Kryptonians sending them off with javelins and stone arrows, they ran back to the 21st century. Although Raoul was dead, the battle on Earth was still not over. Nightwing launched a recovery potion after Batman left. The people on Earth returned to normal and the politicians of various countries heaved a sigh of relief. However, the number of aliens in Raoul's battleship was still huge. Superman, Diana, and all the other superheroes cooperated with the government army. Thea, Batman, and Supergirl also joined the battle later. After fighting for 3 days, all the alien fanatics of the Raoul Church were driven away. She slowly lowered the acceleration barrier on Earth and returned it to normal levels. The war caused by good intentions finally came to an end. Chapter 879. With Raoul's death, the time loophole was finally repaired. In this timeline solidified by Thea, there would no longer be any strange enemies. After seeking the opinion of Superman and Supergirl, Big Cousin Shar was sealed on that nameless planet. But the trouble caused by them could be said to have just begun. One world, one dream's impact on the original order of Earth was placed in front of everyone after Raoul's death and the aliens' defeat. More than 70 countries were dissolved by Raoul. What would happen to these countries? Would they bring back the officials to lead the ordinary people? No one wanted to have a bunch of organizations above them to manage them. It would be fine if they existed forever, but the ordinary people were free for a few days and they wanted to continue to be free. The economic losses were even more incalculable. Raoul believed that everyone was his children, so naturally, they should enjoy the same rights. The doctrine of this Kryptonian god was about equal distribution and believed that resources should belong to everyone. That was what he said and what he did. The economies of various financial groups in various countries suffered a near-devastating blow. The high-tech laboratories under Thea's name, the arsenal, the airline, the ship, and the pharmaceutical companies were all severely impacted. No financial groups in the world escaped. A bunch of rich heroes such as Batman and the Atom Man all suffered the same fate. All kinds of high-tech equipment were lost to the ordinary people. Thea's side was still fine. The Bell of Death jumped out at the critical moment and killed Raoul's believers who were ready to take advantage of the equal distribution. Not much high-tech equipment was lost. Wayne Group and Palmer Group were lost. Many equipment went to the ordinary people, which also gave them the confidence to fight against the government. Even if he wanted to reorganize the company, he couldn't do it because many of the key people had disappeared. The report given to her by the secretary showed that the actual loss of property under her name was more than 15 billion. If the reclusive families took over the remote control companies after they withdrew, it would be more than 100 billion. This was all business, not the valuation of the stock market. Also, because the global economy took a big step backward, the loss of wealth and divine power, she hated Raoul to the core. If he was dead, she would have dragged him out and beaten him up. The global economy has been hit hard. The stock market continues to be delayed. The Federal Reserve calls on everyone to make rational judgments. All kinds of experts and professors spoke on the media, persuading the ordinary people to continue with their original lives. But how was that possible? The money from the government and the consortiums had been distributed to the citizens. If it was just one or two of them, it would still be fine. But Rao was not selfish at all. He had split the money equally. The citizens did not want to give up on the benefits that they had obtained. The government was extremely short of resources, and the conflict between the two sides could not be reconciled. No matter how powerful Thea was, no matter how good her death knell swordsmanship was, there were many technological devices that could never be recovered. If an ordinary person were to get their hands on them, they would be chopped into 8 pieces and given a new coat of paint. How would they be able to prove that it was yours? In short, it was a mess. Metropolis, Hall of Justice. Batman called everyone for a meeting. It wasn't time for the meeting yet. In the past, this was the time to chat, but today everyone was very busy. Everyone had an official identity, and no one had jumped out from the cracks of a rock. Raoul's influence was in all aspects. For example, an ordinary person like Kyle Rayner was on the phone at this time. His father's car had been divided, and was now being coordinated with the insurance company. In the end, Nightwing had joined the alliance. His public identity was that of a police officer from Broodhaven. Now he was sprawled on the table, studying the files from the past few days. Like a spring, he had been suppressed to the extreme by Raoul. When this pressure disappeared, a large number of criminal activities erupted, and he could not take it anymore. Of course, the busiest was Thea. This was her territory, and all kinds of lines were there. At the same time, she had to hold 3 video conferences to clean up the mess everywhere. Diana was also answering the phone for her. She had been working for 3 consecutive days. Other than when she had first taken over the company, she had never been so busy before. On the other side, the Flash was also writing a crime scene investigation report. He used super speed, and in a short while the report piled up half a meter high. Bro Superman was also holding a laptop and writing his own news report. When Batman entered the room, he saw that everyone in the room was busy, but he couldn't say anything because he had just finished his work. He coughed lightly. As the convener of this meeting, he was the first to speak. Raoul is not a bad person. In the Justice League Hall, Batman recounted his experiences on ancient Krypton and talked about the current topic. Raoul was dead, but he had left a lot of things on Earth. These things would not disappear because of his death. The Sahara Desert and several other deserts around the world had become fertile land. The ice in Greenland and Siberia had thawed, and the African warlords had fallen. The forbidden zone of human life was showing signs of becoming a paradise. Following that, there were a lot of social and natural problems, such as rising sea levels, sudden changes in the water cycle and ocean currents, climate change, population migration, and overcrowding at the borders of various countries. The political leaders pinched their noses to solve these social problems, and the natural problems were left to the Justice League. Can the status quo in those places be maintained? It's a good thing that the living space of human beings has been expanded. Batman asked Thea, "What do you want me to do? I can't do anything about it. No one cares about Siberia or Greenland, so it will naturally become cold. This is a problem of the cold air, not a problem of magic." Thea immediately retorted. Zatanna, who had now joined the Justice League, also expressed her support. "It's the same for the Sahara Desert. It's been like this since 3000 AD. Planting more trees to solve the problem of desertification is the right thing to do." Raoul did turn sand into land, but as time passed, the divine power disappeared, and the original state was the same. "This is a matter of science, not magic." Thea continued. She did not reject it directly. She quickly ordered her subordinates to send out drones from Cairo to investigate the Sahara Desert. The images were quickly sent back to the Justice League headquarters, and the heroes watched it. Raoul did a good job. Under his call, the Sahara Desert became fertile land. Many Africans left their homeland and went to this fertile land to start a new life. Many people in the countries around the desert tried to escape the war and migrated in this direction. The roads were crowded with pedestrians. They carried all their belongings and went to the paradise in their hearts. "How long can Raoul's magic last?" Superman asked. His feelings for Rao were extremely complicated. His respect for him was still there. To a certain extent, Rao's ideals were his ideals. However, he was very disgusted by the idea of depriving ordinary people of their wishes. Chapter 880. About 10 to 15 years later. Look at these coordinates, the land has actually turned into sand again. This is a sign of the rapid decline of divine power. She pointed at a few points and explained to everyone. "Can we maintain contact with the green of all things?" Batman asked again. "It's possible, but the green of all things has its own balance with the red of all things and the black of decay. It even has its own internal balance. If the vegetation in the Sahara increases, it may affect the tropical rainforest in South America. It's best to use it carefully. Although they rejected magic methods, maintaining the status quo and giving ordinary people more space to live was still something that the heroes agreed with. They couldn't say that Raoul came with green mountains and clear waters. They could kill him in the name of freedom and democracy, and then let ordinary people starve. They had to be stronger than Raoul, or the superheroes would lose face. A few technological heroes prepared to form a group to observe the scene. Thea wasn't let off by Batman either. The reason was that she had a lot of advanced technology. The environmental issue could only be said to be an appetizer. It was to prepare for the next topic. The Justice League suffered a huge negative impact because of Superman's actions. Even if ordinary people made a lot of money, they still targeted Superman. It was he who called on everyone to believe in Raoul, which led to a series of subsequent disasters. The government's accusations, the people's complaints, and so on. Supergirl had been hit so hard that she hid at home and didn't dare to go out. Fortunately, her reputation was low and her appeal was small. Superman was completely different. He was a landmark superhero. He was now under huge moral pressure and could only rely on a lot of work to numb himself. Of course, the Justice League couldn't push Superman out and cut him down. The only choice was to bear this negative reputation together. It had to be mentioned that Missy also had a lot of negative information. The black snow in the metropolis scared many people to the point of peeing their pants. Thea suspected that it was because of the cold. In addition, she killed many people when she equalized the Quinn Group's assets, which caused a lot of criticism. However, she was thick-skinned. With Superman in front of her and a large number of media outlets to wash the ground, she watched them discuss as if nothing had happened. Schwa! Schwa with all your might. Schwa with all your might. That was the general flow that everyone had in mind. If their reputation dropped, they would just have to raise it again. In addition, Raoul was really a good person this time. Even ordinary people benefited from it. As long as Superman said that he was also deceived, he would naturally gain sympathy. Thea also helped him arrange several live TV events and online broadcasts. She also had the intelligence network of the Righteous Alliance. The target of the attack was global, and it would be back in a few days. In the end, the Sea King brought up an issue. He needed the support of the main alliance. Arthur, is Atlantis in such dire straits? Thea put down the video conference and asked seriously. The ocean occupied 70% of the Earth's total area and nothing could happen to it. The Sea King heaved a long sigh at the mention of this vexing matter. He didn't try to hide his family's predicament, so he recounted the entire situation. The land was in chaos, and the sea was even more chaotic. Even the authority of Queen Atlanta could not withstand it. Poseidon died in battle, and the priests, who had always maintained a close relationship with the royal family, were directly suppressed. The Council of Elders rose in power. They joined forces with Raoul's priest and the Sea King's brother, AMU. The three forces united, and the royal family lost control of Atlantis. It had to be said that Poseidon's death in battle put a huge psychological pressure on the Atlanteans. Even if everything had returned to normal, they still chose to believe in Raoul's priest, even if this god had killed the god they had worshipped for countless years. The strong were respected, and this point of view was even more obvious in the sea. The heroes looked at each other, and they were all in a dilemma. There were too few superheroes who were good at water battles. In comics and movies, heroes could fight for a few rounds, but that was not the case. It was pitch black underwater, and without supervision, there was no way they could fight. They would be killed in minutes. People like the Flash, Batman, and the Atom Man would basically die in the water. Oxygen, vision, pressure, there were too many things to consider. I can mobilize some troops from the military to participate in the battle as allies, but the Righteous Alliance. Thea looked at the heroes in the room. I can help. Brother Superman was the first to respond, followed by Green Lantern Kyle Rayner. He also said that space battles and underwater battles would not affect the Green Lantern. In the end, Thea persuaded Superman. He could fight underwater, but he could only use 30% of his combat power. It was better for him to slowly gain reputation on land. With Green Lantern Kyle and a few Yellow Lanterns and Green Lanterns, they could handle most battles. After all, Atlantis was not a matter of battle but of politics. In the end, Thea spent some time to borrow the Sea King's trident from Poseidon's son, the Cyclops Polyphemus. This was more authoritative than the Neptune's trident, which was passed down in their family. It should be able to help the Sea King gain the support of his people. Late at night, Thea finished her work. Seeing that Diana seemed to have something to say, she asked, "What's wrong?" "Ares is dead." Thea did not know what to say. Was he unlucky? Raoul eliminated the war and directly killed Ares, who was on the verge of death. This god that Diana had heard of for thousands of years was finally dead. Even if he could be resurrected, it would be a matter of hundreds of years later. It was also hard to say if the resurrected Ares would still be the same. She hugged Diana's shoulder and patted her arm to comfort her. Diana only mentioned Ares lightly and quickly moved on. "What do you think is the problem with Raoul's approach?" Raoul's problem is that he is too idealistic. Everyone and everything is bathed in the sunlight. This basically erases the spirituality of intelligent life. Everyone has their own secrets and desires that no one knows about. If all of these are discussed under the sun, it would be too scary. The Raoul from 250,000 years ago saw it very clearly. Unfortunately, he lost himself after that. Thea could not help but sigh. Diana turned sideways and sat on her with her legs spread apart. Two white calves were exposed under her pajamas. The Valkyrie looked straight into her eyes. "What about you? Will you lose yourself?" The princess smiled lightly. "How is that possible? My realm is much higher than Raoul's. You, on the other hand," she sized up Diana. The god of valor was filled with divine power when she fused with the Ion Shark. Thea's realm was much higher, but their actual combat power was about the same. As the god of valor, she could easily control her emotions. Not only that, Diana had worn the purple lamp ring. As a god, her love was unparalleled. In Thea's eyes, Diana's control of love had also reached a small level. Chapter 881. Thea had anger, fear, hope, pity, and greed. On the other hand, Diana had courage and love. They complemented each other perfectly. In order to completely control the white lamp, I also want to learn how to control love. Thea bit Diana's ear softly. Her voice was extremely soft. The god of courage said, "Bring it on. You can't be called a man if you frown." The learning process was extremely painful. In order for her to master it as soon as possible, Diana used all her strength. Love was closely related to courage. Now that the two were combined, together with powerful strength, Thea begged for mercy and said that she would learn again next time. To be fair, the young lady was talented in learning, but it was hard to say when mixed with other things. After a night of learning, it could be said that there was no progress in courage or love. She couldn't be like Diana, who swung her sword without caring about anything and loved without caring about anything. She had too many thoughts and concerns. This was a result of her nature. Of course, there was also good news. As someone who had mastered 4.5 emotions, she had the courage to passively accept love. This was because emotions had a certain absorption and transformation effect. Overall, it was effective. Although the speed was slow, she should be able to master these two emotions after a long time. Of course, the prerequisite was that she had to be passive. For the white lamp, for the life of the universe, I'll let you do it for a few days. She made a bold declaration, which made Diana roll her eyes. In the end, she was lectured again. The two's learning didn't affect their work at all. The next day, they put on thick coats and went to Star City. At the archery club, they had to study how to maintain the topography of the few polar regions. "Hi, I'm Thea Quinn. This is Diana, my girlfriend." The young lady shook hands with a black man in a very stylish manner. The black man had an expression of sudden realization. Then he smiled a little exaggeratedly. Curtis Hort, codename Mr. Excellent. Mr. Excellent was Green Arrow's most recent helper. His wife was pregnant, his good brother had gone to Gotham, and his disciple had been dragged to the Young Titans. Oliver was a general without an army. Coincidentally, Crime was on the rise in Star City recently. He and the young Mr. Excellent liked each other, so they formed a team to maintain law and order. The black man looked a little funny, but he was actually a very intelligent person. It was hard to tell whether the smartest person on Earth was Batman or Luther, but there was no doubt that the third was Mr. Excellent. He had started reading the works of Einstein and Fermat at the age of 6. He knew many languages and had a doctorate in 14 different fields. Hulk's neighbor, Banner, was also a top student, but Banner only had 7 doctorates. From this, it could be seen that Mr. Excellent was a great person. He was worthy of being called the pinnacle of wisdom among mortals. After a brief chat, Batman and the Atom Man arrived one after another. Batman had really taken the time out of his busy schedule to come over. Without Raoul as a target, the Joker's gaze once again found him. The two of them were locked in a fierce battle in Gotham. Everyone sat down, and the Environmental Protection Team was officially established. The topic was also very simple. They had to do their best to preserve Raoul's miracle. Greenland, which was relatively easier, was given to Green Arrow and Mr. Excellent. East Siberia was given to Batman and the Atom Man. As for the deserts on Earth, the 2 goddesses would be responsible for that. The Sahara Desert, the Libyan Desert, and all the way to the Taklamakan Desert. Our mission is too difficult. It's almost 18 million square kilometers. Diana frowned as she looked at it. Sia immediately said that it was too much. Sorry, only you are suitable. The management of the desert should be the same, not to mention that there are countless civilians there now. Batman hinted that this was not just an environmental problem, but also a political problem. Which country did those people belong to? The desert had become fertile land. Now, who owned the land? It added up to 18 million square kilometers. Now that the countries were busy with internal affairs, they did not have time to care about this. When they were done and looked over, they would find a huge piece of meat here. It would be strange if they were not jealous. The heroes needed to unify their opinions, the major countries needed to coordinate, and the small countries could not ignore them. If they were to cause any damage, it would be a disaster. No one knew what Raoul was thinking. The nuclear bombs were also evenly in the hands of the small countries. There were 15,000 nuclear warheads in the world, and now there were 5,000 in the small countries and some organizations. When Thea first heard the news, she was shocked. She quickly told Superman not to earn reputation, but to get the nuclear bombs back first. Superman did not say anything. He called the Martian hunter and Supergirl, who was eating donuts at home. The 3 of them were very busy, stealing and robbing, and with the information provided by many agents, they only managed to get back about 4,000 bombs. If they were not satisfied with the distribution rules, it was hard to guarantee that the small countries and organizations would not take the risk. Thea reluctantly accepted the mission. At least let's go and take a look. Brother Aziz, do you see the campsite in front? You can go to the oasis from there. Look. A man with a cunning expression gestured to the old man beside him that they had reached the place and it was time to pay. The old man's face was weathered, and there was an obvious knife wound on his forehead. He did not wear a traditional robe. Instead, he carried a thick bag on his back and wore a pair of tattered sandals. One of his feet was red, and the other was black. One would not think of fashion when looking at this pair of shoes, because it was obvious that the old man had picked them up on the road. The old man nodded and bowed, hurriedly saying thank you for a long time. Then he carefully took out a roll of US dollars from his backpack and handed it to the man who was leading the way. Dad, will they take us in? The boy looked at the campsite in the distance. Many guards were holding weapons and guarding the passage. The boy had seen some of the weapons before, and some of them were so high-tech that he had never even thought of them. The boy saw with his own eyes 2 cars that tried to break through the checkpoint. They were shot into powder by a huge silver gun in the hands of a guard. There was no blood, no explosion, but it was unimaginably terrifying. There was a glimmer of hope in the old man's eyes. Thank God. If we go there, we can start a new life. The boy's voice was very soft as he muttered, "It's obviously Raoul." The father and son happily paid the toll. The burly man who blocked the way searched them and did not find anything rare. He immediately gestured with his mouth to signal them to leave. The father and son's encounter was just a microcosm. Thea and Diana had already seen more than 10 sentries blocking the way as they flew over. They were not subordinate to each other. Relying on their strong bodies and the advanced weapons in their hands, they collected the money and goods of these poor people along the way. Like vampires, they took away the last bit of savings of these poor people. Damn it! Diana pulled out her sword again. The blade was still stained with blood. Let me do it, the young lady said calmly. She raised her hand and cast an area petrification spell, turning all the burly men in the campsite into stone. Chapter 882. Raoul's oasis gave the poor people hope. The temperature was moderate and the resources were abundant. As long as they were willing to work hard, they would reap the rewards. In addition, there was no exploitation. It was a paradise for the poor. Ordinary people who could no longer live in the countries at the edge of the Sahara Desert rushed here to start a new life. Unfortunately, they were too naive. The rate at which evil grew was far beyond their imagination. Many people who came first saw the benefits and changed their roles. They led the way, set up checkpoints, collected fees, screened, killed, and buried the bodies. It was a one-stop service. Those with benefits would be kept, and those without benefits would be released. The two goddesses walked by and killed more people than they could kill. They could control the heavens and the earth, but they could not control the hearts of people. Perhaps Raoul did not intend to take away the freedom of intelligent life in the beginning. Thea sighed. Other than mental control and brainwashing, she really did not know of any better way to let ordinary people benefit instead of being exploited. No matter how beautiful the wish was, it would become unrecognizable in the end. The two of them flew around the original desert and now the paradise. In just a few days, people with motorized vehicles had already entered the depths of the oasis. They looked more like opportunists than survivors. The father and son from before could only rely on their own 2 feet to move forward. These people are so unscrupulous. Diana looked at a convoy of cars, driving hundreds of ordinary people away like slaves. Dozens of fully armed men were laughing loudly with weapons in their hands. The dust raised by the vehicles was like an earth dragon. The only difference between suffering and happiness was whether or not they had weapons in their hands. Anarchism. Those who have weapons in their hands will naturally put themselves in the position of the leader. Then they will gather the refugees, expand their own team, build a camp, and then fight with other camps to determine the final victor. Thea talked to herself. The two women's faces were not looking good. Then what should we do? Just wait? Diana had been in human society for 100 years and had studied many political systems. Although they were all theories on paper, she still had some basic knowledge. Thea wanted to say to defeat the evil people and give the good people weapons to maintain order. However, when she thought of human nature, she hesitated. Once power was in hand, the good people would also become evil. They might even be worse than these people now. Let me think about it. Let's observe for a while longer. They looked at several desert areas and discussed countermeasures with Green Arrow, Batman, and the others. This problem existed in several places. In the beginning, establishing order required bloodshed. Later on, development required bloodshed. In the end, fighting against other countries required even more bloodshed. If he had the mindset that it was better to avoid unnecessary trouble, he could have directly dispersed Raoul's divine power and restored this place to its original state. This would have prevented many conflicts. But the heroes did not want to do it. Oliver and Diana were determined to persevere. The slightly lazy young mistress could only be forcefully pulled by the heroes to think of ideas. There was no doubt that Raoul had encountered these problems in the beginning. In the past 250,000 years, there were trillions of intelligent life forms. Not all of them were Kryptonians. In the beginning, Raoul might have thought of various ways to resist greed and reduce conflict, but all his efforts were in vain. In the end, he could only play the simple and crude game of changing a small part of the brain of an intelligent being, making them worship him and obey his orders. It was not convenient for Thea to do so, so she could only ponder on it. She deliberated her words. First of all, we can't appear directly. If it has to be a superhero, Mr. Excellent can do it. Just like the previous nuclear bomb fight, it was not suitable for the president's son, daughter, or daughter's friend to appear. Their identities were sensitive and could easily lead to unnecessary interpretation. It was the same for the current political system. Batman was not suitable either. He was too busy and had too much prestige. Mr. Excellent was very suitable. He was not famous, smart, and black. Me alone? The black man on the video link opened his mouth wide and was a little surprised. Thea wanted to say, "Yes, that's right." But she knew it was unrealistic. Let's talk to the young Titan and see if they can help. It should not be too sensitive for the half-grown children to do this. Their eyes lit up. This idea was very good. The young Titan was not a subordinate of the Alliance. They were an independent organization. The children had strong self-esteem and could not give orders. Thea and the others began to communicate. Batman looked for Tim, Diana looked for Casey, Thea looked for Raven, and Green Arrow looked for the armory. The negotiation process was very fast. The young Titan had nothing to do, and Tim attached great importance to this collective activity. The enemy was only a few militants, and their strength was extremely weak. However, this operation was very significant. It was estimated that tens of millions of refugees would enter this area in the 18 million square kilometers. This level of major event was very much in line with the children's values and a mission that could prove themselves. The chaos might be stopped for a while under the attack of a group of little heroes, but what about the political system? Anarchism? Or autonomy? Batman and Excellent, whose IQ was off the charts, could not think of a solution. Heroes were heroes and politics was politics. She could only leave this problem to her mother. Moira was very busy at this time. Not only was she busy, but the leaders of the various countries were also busy. At this time, she could see the advantage of strengthening her mother's physique. The leaders of the various countries were exhausted. Only old comrade Moira was still in command, and she had taken the initiative. She did not care about the 18 million square kilometers. With the existence of extraterrestrial trade, the country did not lack resources. There was no need to occupy such a large area of land, arousing hostility from other countries and destroying the internal balance. Moira wanted to be a good president. She did not intend to be a queen who opened up new territories. Use religion. Don't those people believe in Raoul? Use this as a banner to gather everyone's beliefs. Maybe it will work. Of course, the premise is that Raoul is dead. That guy is dead, right? He's dead. Don't worry. Thea reassured her mother. She had to admit that Moira had given her a good idea. There were pros and cons to raising Raoul's banner again. The pros were that the ordinary people had received his kindness. Although they were controlled and brainwashed, their memories were still there. No one could deny that Raoul had helped them, and the few priests were not greedy. The cons were that the major countries in the world and the countries around the desert were independent. However, they would definitely arouse the hostility of other countries. There was no difference whether their hatred was 500 or 1,000. If they were flexible, they might be able to take advantage of the disagreements between the countries and find a new path. Thea explained the method to them, but Batman was still worried. Is Raoul really not going to rise from the ashes? Or are you going to start a new religion? Chapter 883. I don't have the time to write Raoul's Bible, but there are many Raoul priests in Atlantis. Maybe I can pull them over. Anyway, this is Raoul's land of miracles. It's only natural for them to spread their religion. At the same time, they can solve the Sea King's problem. It had to be said that this was killing many birds with one stone. Thea and Diana immediately rushed to Atlantis. She wanted to persuade the priests to spread their religion on land. San Francisco T Building. This was the headquarters of the Young Titans. Nightwing and Princess Spark were both adults. They each had their own jobs and were very busy recently. The arms dealer, Kuroe Harper, was originally Spacetime Thea's lover. Now, he had met the second-generation Robin, Red Hood Jason Todd. The two of them were very close. Regardless of whether it was because of his ideals or something else, he did not respond to the young Titan's summons. Martian Maiden, Martian Hunter, Superman, and Supergirl were searching for nuclear bombs all over the world. They did not have the time either. Other than the four of them, Red Robin, Wonder Girl, Raven, Pulse, Animal Boy, and Blue Beetle were all present. Perhaps because Gotham was too dangerous, Batman was afraid that the Joker would attack his son when he was not home. Therefore, he sent Damian over as well. Of course, he was there to help. Damian also called his good friend, Jonathan Kent Jr., who was watching television at home. 8 half-grown children gathered together to prepare for their first group mission. The adult heroes had thought it through well. Mr. Excellent would lead them to eliminate evil and bring peace to the people. It was a pity that the adults had underestimated the children's competitiveness. Mr. Excellent? Where did this black uncle come from? Holding 2 shining silver light balls in his hands? Let him play with his eggs. Mr. Excellent, whose IQ was off the charts, did not want to offend them either. Look at this group of people. They were Superman's son, Batman's son, Thea's disciple, Diana's disciple, and the Flash's grandson. These young masters and young ladies were all descendants of famous families. It was not a matter of principle. Of course, he would not be the bad guy. He happily expressed that he would help. Red Robin Tim said a few polite words about contacting them again when he was free. Then he hung up the call. Everyone, where do you think we should go first? They were all capable people, but considering that it was their first group activity, he decided to stick together. Greenland was the first to be eliminated. Mr. Excellent was there. He had just rejected the other party, and now he appeared in front of the other party half an hour later. Even a few half-grown children wouldn't be so shameless. East Siberia was also ruled out because Batman was there. In the end, they agreed to go to the Sahara Desert first. As one of Batman's direct subordinates, Tim had no lack of fighter jets. Other than Pulse Bart Allen, who could only run, everyone else could fly. Even Damian had the great Leonopteryx that Thea had given him. However, in order to keep a low profile, they all chose to sit in the plane. The few of them gathered in 2s and 3s to chat. Raven and Damian had known each other for many years. Although their master was not very reliable, and most of the time they were self-taught, over time they had developed some feelings for each other. The 2 of them were chatting with each other with a special tacit understanding. Little Jonathan and Animal Boy, who had turned into a gorilla, were arm wrestling. Pulse was studying the Blue Beetle's armor. On the other hand, Wonder Girl, who was sitting in the front passenger seat, was chatting with Tim. Looking at the vast expanse of greenery on the land, she couldn't help but exclaim, "This place has changed a lot." That's right. Sahara means Great Desert in Arabic. In the Bible, this is hell. In the ancient Mesopotamia, Tim blabbered on, and Wonder Girl Casey rolled her eyes. The 2 of them were about the same age, 3 or 4 years older than the group of children behind them. They had more in common and even had a good impression of each other. Casey only hoped that the process of courtship would be more romantic. However, Tim was inexperienced and couldn't wait to tell her everything he knew. His outward appearance was that he used too much force, which often made Casey not know how to respond. She could only laugh and change the topic. The 8 young people walked and stopped as if they were on a spring outing. These militants were at most ordinary people who had picked up weapons. They weren't even soldiers, so how could they be a match for them? They destroyed 3 camps easily and liberated hundreds of refugees. Just when the few of them felt that the mission was not challenging, an old man inadvertently told them a strange piece of news. Devil? There have always been signs of devil activity in the depths of the Sahara Desert? Tim repeated this sentence in a low voice. He first looked at Damian. This cheap brother of his was a member of the magic world after all. Damian shook his head, indicating that he didn't feel any magic. Tim then looked at Casey. Wonder Girl carefully analyzed, frowned and looked at Raven, shaking her head. Her armor of silence was made to defeat the 3-palace demon. The armor hated Raven's aura. Even though she knew that the 2 teachers were unusually close, Wonder Girl still had an extremely cold relationship with Raven. The Great Demon King's princess secretly criticized Casey and also shook her head. There were no signs of devil activity here at all. That old man must have drunk too much. Tim, who was proficient in psychology, micro-expressions, and the art of language, conversed with the old man again and asked a few locals. Interesting. The locals here all say that before Raoul, there were legends of demons in the valley in the northwest. According to the legends, demons can suck human blood, but they never go out of their territory. Tim touched his chin and shared the news he had heard with his friends. The few of them looked at each other. There was no fear in their eyes. They all had an expression that said, this seems interesting. When did the legends first start? Damien continued to ask methodically. 300 years ago, but in the recent 50 years, a group of strangers would come here every few years. The eyes of young Titan and the others lit up. They all looked like they didn't mind if things got out of hand. Someone had built a secret base in the desert and seemed to have carried out some inhumane experiments. This conclusion was not difficult to deduce. Tim looked at the eyes of his friends and quickly finalized a plan. First, they would go and see what secrets there were. Then, depending on the severity of the situation, they would choose to beat them up or cripple them. This secret valley was not far from them, less than 50 miles away. The few of them displayed their various abilities. Some flew, some ran, and some teleported. They all stopped at the outermost periphery. There were no devils in the valley at all. There were only tents everywhere. According to the number of tents, there should be no less than 500 people. Similarly, there were refugees everywhere and dozens of gunmen. It was no different from the thugs' camp that young Titan had dealt with before. There are no infrared rays, no drones, and no satellites above our heads. Tim quickly checked again. Chapter 884. After all, they were all descendants of famous families, so they did not rush over recklessly. Little Jonathan's supervision was sometimes ineffective, so Tim had no choice but to send Animal Boy to transform into an eagle and investigate. Very normal refugees armed with guns. They're no different from the enemies we've dealt with before. Animal Boy scouted around and quickly flew back to report. Tim hesitated for a moment before deciding to attack. Even if there was trouble, he felt that his team was enough to deal with it. He made a gesture and charged forward. He knocked down a burly man with an elbow. On the other side, Casey, Bart Allen, and the rest attacked one after another. The resistance of the camp was extremely weak. Tim analyzed the strength of the enemy as he fought. He felt that there was something wrong, but it was not fake that the enemy was defeated so easily. He could only think that he was being overly cautious. A very weak enemy. The legends are most likely fake. Damien knocked down the last burly man, and the refugees knelt on the ground. He did not like the atmosphere here, so he suggested that they continue walking. The few young heroes did not like being bowed to either, so they avoided him. At this moment, Tim saw a middle-aged woman in the crowd looking at him with a faint smile. She had triangular eyes, high cheekbones, and very tight skin on her face. She was completely different from the locals. He was just about to shout that there was something wrong here when he saw the middle-aged woman put on a mask and throw out a smoke bomb. As she exploded, another 4 people stood up in the crowd. They also put on masks and raised their arms. The smoke was as light as a veil, and there seemed to be countless whales within it. It was ethereal and fatal. Tim was just about to shout for the poisonous smoke when he realized that his tenacious will had been destroyed in an instant. He fell to the ground in a daze. The last thought he had before he fainted was, "What kind of smoke is this? It has such a strong effect." As he fell to the ground, the young Titans and the ordinary people in the camp also fell to the ground. Casey's body flashed with a red light, but he fell to the ground in less than 2 seconds. The only exceptions were Damien and Raven. Their super long-distance teleportation gems were triggered, and they disappeared into the horizon at the same time. The middle-aged woman did not have any means to chase after them. She could only clench her fists in hatred. The poisonous smoke did not recognize her. She would fall if she took off her mask. After waiting for a while, she opened the mechanism on the other side, revealing a winding passage that led downwards. He called out to his subordinates, and they carried the few young Titans to the underground. "Young Master Damien? Master Damien, wake up!" Damien heard the old butler Fu's voice while he was unconscious. He didn't know how long it took for him to open his eyes. Did he return to the Batcave? The familiar surroundings seemed to be telling him that the previous scene was a dream. He tried his best to control his thoughts and pull his attention back to the present. Finally, he managed to suppress the discomfort. They had been plotted against. Perhaps the old man who told them about the demon was part of the conspiracy? How despicable! Damien gritted his teeth and touched his neck. The teleportation gem had turned into powder. He finally understood the reason. "How long have I been back?" Damien asked the old butler. 13 minutes. Your teleportation spell was blocked outside the cave. Carried you in. Should I inform Master? Don't. I'll take care of it myself. Damien refused without even thinking about it. Summoning his own father when he couldn't beat him? He would rather die than do such a thing. Raven. Thinking that he could teleport, the big loli was most likely teleported away as well. He hurriedly used the equipment in the Batcave to contact Raven. As expected, she had also escaped. Raven's magic resistance was much higher than his. Even though Damien was injected with a bunch of antidotes by the old butler, he was still a little dazed. Raven, on the other hand, was fine. However, the Demon King's princess was furious. She could tolerate the stranger's plot. After all, she couldn't beat him. But those people were nothing. They were just a few ordinary people. If Damien didn't contact her, she would kill her way back. Wait a moment. Come and get me. We'll go together, Damien said through gritted teeth. He turned off the anti-teleportation device in the Batcave. Raven rushed over quickly and brought him to the Sahara Desert again. The old butler looked at the two young people running away in a hurry. It was as if he was looking at his own children and grandchildren. He was satisfied, happy, and so on. As for letting Raven see the layout of the Batcave, he didn't care. The young man and woman returned to the previous campsite. There was still a faint smoke at the scene. They didn't dare to act rashly. What kind of smoke is this? Can you analyze it? Raven asked. In her impression, Damien was just like his father, blindly researching when he had nothing to do. Turned out that Damien really did know. Do you know the Sea of Souls that Big Sister Thea left in the New World? If I'm not wrong, the main ingredient here is that thing. Ah, how did they get this thing? That place was already sealed by Big Sister Thea. Damien shrunk his neck and laughed dryly. Maybe they stole it before. I heard that a few groups of people went to the scene before. He didn't have the face to say that his own father was the one who stole the most, and the most ruthless. Ending this awkward topic, the two walked deeper into the campsite. For mages, as long as they were prepared, nothing could stop them. As Thea's two disciples, they were very accomplished in dark magic. No matter how strong the smoke was, it was still dead, and people were alive. Seeing that no one was on guard, they used a wind spell to disperse the poisonous smoke and began to search the campsite. It's here. Damien found the switch and opened a secret passage. Using an invisibility spell, they walked down. The passage was winding. In order to avoid the traps on the ground, the two turned into shadows and carefully floated down. As they continued to move forward, they saw the tip of the iceberg of this underground base. It covered a large area and extended in all directions. But whether it was the walls or the roads, they were a little old. Everything here was obviously unrelated to Raoul. There was no divine power or magic. It was completely man-made. It was just that they didn't know how much manpower it took to excavate such a huge underground building in the depths of the desert. Stop! Damien waved his hand to signal for them to stop. He pointed at two guards who were patrolling in the distance. There were two bald men in white robes. Their shoulders and sleeves were blood-red. They were carrying high-tech firearms and walking casually. Who are they? They don't seem to be from the military. Take them down and ask? Raven was a little eager. Damien looked at them carefully and shook his head. I recognize their clothes. They are blood brothers. They used to be a member of the Assassin League. But the leader was obsessed with finding forbidden items and was exiled by grandfather. I didn't expect that after 200 years. They are still alive. Forbidden items. Yes, the Spear of Fate, the Shroud, Judas's Oath, and something like that, Damien said casually.